Chapter 1245. Not long after Jun Xiaoyaro and the others left, a group of people suddenly arrived. A group of people arrived. They were Di Haotian's people. Di Haotian's silver moon-like eyes scanned the place, and a hint of suspicion flashed across his eyes. Why isn't it here? Did I remember wrongly? Di Haotian thought to himself. If he remembered correctly, there should be a past-era flower here. For some reason, Di Haotian thought of Jun Xiaoyaro again. After all, when he was in the Void Sky world, all his opportunities were taken away by Jun Xiaoyaro. It was as if he was the one who was cut off. And now, the same thing was happening again. Of course, Di Haotian only thought for a moment before disappearing. After all, Jun Xiaoyaro was seriously injured and was recuperating in the Jun family. How could he come here? It can't be him. Maybe I remembered wrongly. Di Haotian shook his head. Young king, what's wrong? A woman in a white dress with an ethereal temperament asked. It was by Luoxue. Nothing, let's go, Di Haotian said. Although they didn't find the past-era flower here, there was more than one in the Forgotten Country. This flower was related to Di Haotian's important plan, so he had to get one. He left with the group to look for it in other places. On the other side, Jun Xiaoyaro, Ling Yang, and the others went to Womanland under Yi Hua's lead. On the way, Jun Xiaoyaro and the others learned that Yi Hua was a great general of Womanland. Through her, they learned a little about the situation. There were a total of 9 countries in the periphery of the Forgotten Land. Yu Country, Spirit Country, Demon World, Sea Territory, Sorcerer Race, Soul Race, Womanland, Centaur Race, and Demon Race. This made Ling Yang sigh. It was as if they had come to a fairy tale kingdom. Among them, there were some that had a better attitude towards the outer realm, such as Womanland, Feather, Spirit, and so on. There were also those who were extremely hostile towards the outer world, such as the Demon World, the Shaman Race, and the Spirit Race. Ling Yang wanted to ask more questions, such as where the ruins of the ancient Xian Ting were. However, Yi Hua didn't say anything about this. He only said that he would wait until they met his daughter. After an unknown period of time, a huge city appeared before everyone's eyes. It was different from the ordinary, simple, and grand cities. This city was incomparably exquisite and gorgeous. Even the city walls were inlaid with various pearls and gems. Of course, they weren't limited to just being fancy. They all had practical defensive properties. This is Womanland. The group of people were surprised. This was especially true for Ling Yang and the other girls. When they saw the magnificent city, their beautiful eyes couldn't help but flash with amazement. Yi Hua led them inside. Within the city, there was no one who wasn't a beautiful woman with a graceful figure. Moreover, they wore skimpy clothes, revealing their flat bellies and white arms. The eyes of those girls were filled with surprise and curiosity as they looked at Ling Yang and the others. To be precise, they were looking at the men in the group. After all, there weren't many men in Womanland. Are those the outer realm creatures? There are also some men among them. It seems like a good idea to catch one as a male slave. Oh right, that fatty is yours. I don't want to. Around him, a group of women were chattering away. At first, Lu Fugue's small eyes were wide open as he thought that he had arrived in heaven. However, when he heard the conversation of those girls, his face darkened. What's wrong? Looking down on the fatty? Don't the fatty have human rights? Lu Fugue was angry. Was he being despised even as a male slave? On the other hand, because of Qin Yuanqing's good looks, the eyes of many girls in Womanland lit up slightly. Qin Yuanqing was very satisfied with this, and the corner of his mouth curled into a faint smile. Sigh, I can't help it. A handsome man like me will attract attention wherever I go. Qin Yuanqing said indifferently with his hands behind his back. Hey, you, if you're not a girl, why are you acting cool? Lu Fugue was even more unbalanced in his heart. He turned to Jun Xiaoyaro and said, Brother, don't you think this kid needs to be taught a lesson? Seeing this, Qin Yuanqing said with a touch of disdain, he probably doesn't have good looks, so he hides his head and shows his tail. He doesn't dare to show his true face. On the side, Ling Yang, who heard this, silently glanced at Jun Xiaoyao. If Jun Xiaoyao showed his true face, perhaps all the girls in Womanland would go crazy. Jun Xiaoyao, on the other hand, remained calm. He didn't care about the various opinions of others, but used the perception of the Three Lives primordial spirit to explore the entire Womanland. He had a nagging feeling that something was amiss. What is wrong? Jun Xiaoyao thought to himself. Soon, they arrived at a luxurious palace. Under Yi Hua's guidance, they arrived at the palace. A beautiful woman who looked to be in her 20s was sitting high on the throne. She wore a bright red phoenix robe, with a cloudy hair and white hair. Her appearance was beautiful, and there was a red dot between her eyebrows, which added a bit of nobility to her. Her figure was excellent, her breasts towering, and her snow-white long legs were crossed under her skirt. She was definitely a woman who could be called a national beauty. "Greetings, Your Majesty." Yi Hua knelt on one knee. Then, she turned her head and signaled Ling Yang and the others to kneel as well. But no one knelt. This group of people were either geniuses of immortal lineages or descendants of remote antiquity families. How could they kneel so casually? It doesn't matter, are they the creatures from the outside world? The Queen of Womanland glanced at Ling Yang and the others. "You are the Queen of Womanland. To be honest, we don't know much about this forgotten land. But we have no ill intentions towards you, and we won't stay here for long." As the leader of the group, Ling Yang said. In Womanland, there were no experts with terrifying strength. However, if they all swarmed over, Ling Yuan's team would also suffer losses. "Don't worry, our Womanland is not the demon world or the witch race. We have no hostility towards you creatures from the outside world. On the contrary, we welcome your arrival. If I'm not wrong, you should be here for the opportunity," the Queen of Womanland said. Ling Yang and the others' eyes lit up. Coincidentally, when the blood moon rises, the three great secret realms will open again. The Queen of Womanland said. "Three great secret realms?" Ling Yang and the others were confused. They could guess that the blood moon should be referring to the Mars demon star. And what were the three great secret realms? The baptism pool, divine soul pool, and flying immortal waterfall are the opportunities of the three great secret realms in this forgotten land. If any country can get it, they will be strong for a long time. Unfortunately, our Womanland is only in the middle of the 9 great countries and is not the strongest. So we have no advantage in fighting for the 3 great secret realms. But I can feel that your strength is not weak. If you are willing to help our Womanland fight for one of the secret realms, then you can share the opportunity of the secret realms. The Queen of Womanland's words made Ling Yang and the others' eyes light up. Didn't they come to the forgotten country for the opportunity? Although they had no clue about the ancient Xianting ruins for the time being. But the opportunity of the 3 great secret realms would not be small. Chapter 1246. The main problem now is that they don't know the layout of the forgotten country. As one of the 7 incredible places, the forgotten country is too mysterious. The ancient Xianting chose part of the ruins here because they thought it was the safest place. Now Ling Yang and the others only know that the periphery of the forgotten country is called the Forgotten Land. The native creatures of the 9 great countries live here. They fight each other for the 3 great secret realms. We agree. Ling Yang nodded. The Daughter King said with satisfaction, "That's good. According to my Daughter King's law, men are either demoted to slaves or expelled. Since you are willing to help, then the law is naturally invalid to you." Hearing this, Lu Fugue muttered, "Then we've dodged a bullet." Jun Xiaoyao didn't comment on this. In fact, from the moment he stepped into the daughter country, he has been using his divine sense to sense everything around him. He always felt that the forgotten land, the 9 great countries, should have secrets. "Okay, you all go down first. After the reorganization, we can set off in a few days." The Daughter King waved her hand. Ling Yang and the others turned and left. At this time, the Daughter King's gaze unconsciously fell on Jun Xiaoyao. Because in the whole team, only he was wearing a black robe with a hood, looking very mysterious. But for some reason, the Daughter King always felt that this black-robed man was the one who hid the deepest in the whole team. A ray of light flashed in the depths of the Daughter King's beautiful eyes. After a few days, the daughter country's army was organized. They were all wearing skirt armor, valiant and formidable women. Looking around, there were more than 100,000 people. Looking at the outside world, this is definitely not a number. After all, the Jun family's immortal battle has at least tens of millions of cultivators participating. But this is the forgotten land after all, and the 9 great countries are the native residents here. Obviously the number can't be too high. This time, the daughter king personally led the army. General Yi Hua was also beside her. Ling Yang and the others were naturally among them. They continued to move forward, and after a few days, they came to a place similar to an oasis. An extremely dense spiritual aura was flowing in the air. Everyone looked over. In the oasis, there was a lake that was as calm as a sapphire. It shone with a diamond-like luster. Shockingly, they were all fragmented Daoist laws, which set off the entire lake in a beautiful and magnificent manner. That is the baptism pool. It can baptize one's physical body and primordial spirit, washing away all imperfections and forging a perfect foundation. Yi Hua explained. When Ling Yang and the others heard this, their eyes lit up. Although they were all peerless geniuses, their bodies and primordial spirits were flawless, and their cultivations were extraordinary. But to say that it was absolutely perfect, that was not the case. Even if Jun Xiaoyaro was perfect, there would always be a trace of imperfection. This was not a weakness. Instead, it was something that all living beings possessed. To put it bluntly, even the heavenly Tao could not be absolutely perfect. It might be a near-perfect existence, but it was definitely not truly perfect. And if there was something that was truly perfect, that could only be the legendary immortals. Of course, this did not mean that everyone would have the potential to become an immortal after being baptized in the baptismal pool. It meant that their physical body and primordial spirit would become even more flawless. Their foundation would be almost perfect, and their cultivation talent, comprehension, and other aspects would also skyrocket. This was the meaning of the baptism pool. I must go and take some baptism water back. If I use this water to forge weapons, I might be able to forge a real immortal artifact. Lu Fugue's eyes lit up. The dream of the Lu family for generations was to forge a real immortal artifact. But until now, only the ancestral patriarch of the Lu family had forged a pseudo-immortal artifact. And this was already the record of the deity region. There were also rumors that all the immortal artifacts in the deity region were passed down and not forged by later generations. One could imagine that if the Lu family forged an immortal artifact, their status and prestige would obviously be incomparable to now. It could be said that Ling Yang and the other geniuses' eyes were burning with passion. Even Jun Xiaoyaro was a little curious. To put it bluntly, in terms of perfection, even Ling Yang's physical body and primordial spirit were far inferior to his. Just as everyone was getting excited, the ground suddenly shook, and smoke filled the air in the distance. Shocking battle intent swept over. "They're here." The daughter king's eyes were filled with a hint of seriousness. However, in the next moment, her pitilessly beautiful face changed once more. This was because from another direction, another group of soldiers was rushing over in a grandiose manner. 2 groups of people have arrived at the same time. General Yi Hua's expression also changed. The number of people in the 2 groups was no less than that of the daughter country. A game of chess between 3 forces would inevitably produce more variables. "Oh, daughter country, I didn't expect you to have the courage to fight for the baptism pool." An indifferent voice sounded, coming from one of the 2 groups of people. It was the demon world of the 9 great nations. The one who spoke was a young man wearing pitch-black armor and holding a blood-stained spear. His aura was that of a great heavenly venerable. Although he looked young, his real age was probably not too young. In addition, this was a forgotten nation with all kinds of mysteries. The strength of the living beings here could not be compared to the deity region outside. Demon Crown Prince, the daughter king's expression was cold. Clearly, this was a famous monstrous expert of the demon world. On the other side, another voice came. "If I'm not wrong, that group should be the living beings of the outer realm. Is that the source of your daughter country's confidence?" The one who spoke was wearing a black sorcerer robe and holding a white bone staff. It was an expert of the sorcerer race, Tian Wuzi. He. Tian Wuzi, why don't we join forces and destroy the daughter country and these living beings of the outer realm? The demon crown prince sneered. No problem. The 3 great secret realms are the struggle of our 9 great nations. There is no need for outsiders to interfere. Tian Wuzi's tone was also cold. Haha, that's great. After all, this crown prince wants to turn the daughter king into my personal slave. The demon crown prince said arrogantly. Impudent, how dare you insult Her Majesty the Queen? General Yi Hua coldly rebuked, anger surging in her beautiful eyes. The demon crown prince did not care. He casually swept his gaze and saw Ling Yang. His eyes were filled with surprise. Hihi, this woman of the outer realm is even nobler than the daughter king. Interesting. In that case, this crown prince can spare your life. Ling Yang's face was cold, and her heart was filled with anger. This demon crown prince dared to have designs on her. However, before Ling Yang could make a move, Qin Yuanqing's heart stirred. His chance to show off had come. You're courting death. Young Emperor Ling Yang is not someone you can insult. Qin Yuanqing's aura was also at the lesser heavenly venerate realm. After Jun Xiaoyaro broke through to the lesser heavenly venerate realm, Ling Yang and some other monstrous geniuses also gradually broke through to the lesser heavenly venerate realm. However, in terms of true combat strength, they were obviously not comparable to Jun Xiaoyaro. Not everyone could be like Jun Xiaoyaro, who could kill a great heavenly venerate with a single punch. However, Qin Yuanqing was confident. Even if he could not defeat the demon crown prince, he could at least stall for a while and express his desire to protect Ling Yang. In an instant, a chaotic battle between the 3 nations broke out. Chapter 1247. On the chaotic battlefield, millions of creatures fought against each other. All kinds of sword auras, demonic auras, and nomological lights flashed and collided. Qin Yuanqing, on the other hand, was very unyielding. He directly attacked the demon crown prince. The entire battlefield was in chaos. The other members of his entourage also made their moves. Among them, Lu Fugue was the most violent. He directly took out many divine weapons from his spatial artifact. A large number of creatures were killed or injured. As for Jun Xiaoyaro, he was very calm. He didn't even make a move. After all, for someone like him, who had experienced the immortal war and the war between the 2 worlds. A battle of this level was indeed no different from children playing house. Even now, he was still thinking about what the 9 great nations meant. However, there was no doubt about the opportunity in the baptismal pool. It would be of some help to him. At this moment, a muffled scream was heard. It was Qin Yuanqing. He was injured by the demon crown prince. He spat out blood and was sent flying like a kite with a broken string. Jun Xiaoyaro secretly shook his head when he saw this. Why did he not care about Qin Yuanqing's provocation? Because this person was not even worthy of his attention, nor was he qualified to make him attack. At this moment, a ray of light flashed out. Ling Yang made a move to fight the demon crown prince. Qin Yuanqing swallowed a healing pill and seemed to sense some gazes. He turned to look at Jun Xiaoyaro. What are you looking at? If you make a move, you won't be able to block a single move from the demon crown prince. Jun Xiaoyaro ignored him. On the other side, Tian Wuzi of the sorcerer race also made a move. His target was the daughter king. As long as the daughter king was suppressed, the army of the daughter kingdom would definitely be in chaos. How dare you? General Yi Hua wanted to stop them, but he was held back by the other sorcerer race powerhouses. The daughter king was calm when she saw this. She released her aura. She was also a great heavenly venerate. The creatures of the forgotten nations could not be treated the same as those of the outside world. The battle between the 2 sides was naturally intense. Suddenly, Tian Wuzi took out a large black bell. It seemed to be made of dark universe dark gold and was engraved with many ancient sorcerer race characters. Sorcerer God Bell. Under this kind of suppression, the female king was immediately forced back, blood flowing from the corner of her mouth. Hee. Your womanland wants to fight for the 3 great secret realms? That's just a fool's dream. Master Tian witchcraft continued to suppress. The strength of a great Empyrean combined with the witch god bell was enough to completely suppress the female king. The female king also took out a painting scroll, which exuded dazzling divine light and Tao laws. However, if this were to drag on, the situation would not be good for Womanland. After all, they were fighting one against two. Zhun Xiaoyaro finally moved. He had no interest in a war of this level. However, if he wanted to obtain the baptismal pool, he had to end the chaos in front of him. With a flicker, Zhun Xiaoyaro appeared in the middle of the battle between Tian Wuzi and the female monarch. Tian Wuzi had wanted to use the sorcerer god bell to suppress the queen. However, a black-robed figure suddenly appeared in between them. The queen's phoenix eyes flashed. Without saying a word, Zhun Xiaoyaro punched out. The void in front of him was torn apart. The sorcerer god bell exploded with a clang, and metal fragments flew everywhere. Tian Wuzi did not even have time to be shocked before he was killed by a single punch. There was dead silence in all directions. General Yi Hua looked at the scene in front of him in a daze. It turned out that this black-robed person was the strongest among this group of outer realm beings. He killed a great Empyrean with a single punch. Qin Yuanqing was stunned when he saw that. Is he not a prodigy of the younger generation? Qin Yuanqing could not believe it. If he was really a prodigy of the younger generation, how many of them could be so powerful? F***ck, this guy is the one with the deepest secrets. Lu Fugue was also stunned by what he saw. Zhun Xiaoyaro was indifferent to the exclamations from all directions. He turned to the female king and asked, "Are you okay?" The female king also came back to her senses and took a deep look at Zhun Xiaoyaro. "Thank you." On the other side, the demon crown prince's expression changed when he saw this scene. However, he felt that Ling Yang, who was fighting with him, seemed to be getting more and more vicious. It was as if he was venting his anger on him. Ling Yang also saw the scene of Zhun Xiaoyaro saving the female king. But for some reason, he was a little unhappy. Zhun Xiaoyaro did not help him deal with the demon crown prince first, but went to save the female king and save the female king. In the end, Ling Yang took out the heavenly emperor's throne mark, which carried a suppressive force. Even the demon crown prince could not deal with it. Of course, what he was more afraid of was Zhun Xiaoyaro making a move. Not long after, the army of the demon world and the sorcerer race fled in defeat. The female soldiers of Womanland immediately cheered. Countless gazes fell on Zhun Xiaoyaro. To be honest, they were getting more and more curious about this black-robed person. I really wonder what kind of person he is. Could he be the same as that fatty? How is that possible? He's such a powerful expert. He should be extremely graceful and outstanding. In Womanland, the status of men was very low. But as long as one was a human, they would worship the strong. This was an unchanging law. Zhun Xiaoyaro was able to earn the respect of others simply by demonstrating sufficient strength. Hey, praise him, why do you have to drag me into it? Lu Fugue was simply lying down and getting shot. However, he was also more curious about Zhun Xiaoyaro than before. As for Qin Yuanqing, his face was a little ugly. Just now, he said that Zhun Xiaoyaro would definitely not be able to block a single move from the Demon Crown Prince. But now, he had killed the Heavenly Witchcraft Master, who was on the same level as the Demon Crown Prince, with a single strike. But after seeing Zhun Xiaoyao's strength, Qin Yuanqing did not dare to be as unscrupulous as before. After all, this was the Forgotten Country. If this black-robed person really wanted to kill him, he would have nowhere to cry out. What a good play of the hero saving the beauty. Ling Yang opened his mouth and said. But listening to it, there seemed to be a kind of jealousy in the air. As a woman, the Womanland King obviously noticed it. She could feel that Ling Yang's identity should be extremely extraordinary in the outside world. And such an extraordinary woman seemed to be jealous of this black-robed person. He had undoubtedly aroused the Womanland King's interest. I think we should focus on the opportunity in the baptismal pool first, Zhun Xiaoyaro said. If not for the 3 secret realms, he would be too lazy to make a move. Next, everyone came to the baptismal pool. Of course, not everyone was qualified. The baptismal pool was divided into several areas. The outer area, the central area, and the core area. From the baptismal effect, it was obvious that the core area had the best effect. But it was obviously not something that ordinary people were qualified to enjoy. Most of the Womanland King's female soldiers could only absorb the baptismal air around the baptismal pool. A small number of Womanland's elites could cultivate in the outer area. As for General Yi Hua, Ling Yang, Lu Fugui, Qin Yuanqing, and the others, they could cultivate in the central area. Only the Womanland King could enjoy the inner area. However, the Womanland King looked at Zhun Xiaoyao. You deserve the most credit in this battle. Come with me. There was a dead silence. Chapter 1248. Everyone, including General Yi Hua and the others, was dumbfounded. They didn't expect the daughter king to invite a man. Although it wasn't a shared bath. But in the baptismal pool, it was inevitable to get wet. Logically speaking, the core area was a forbidden area exclusive to the daughter king. Then it would be impolite for me to refuse. Zhun Xiaoyao smiled faintly. In fact, even if the daughter king didn't say it, he would have. Zhun Xiaoyao wanted to get the best of the opportunities he had. Even if the daughter king didn't agree, Zhun Xiaoyao was prepared to use force. But obviously, the daughter king was quite sensible, which was why Zhun Xiaoyao chose to help her. However, Zhun Xiaoyao vaguely felt that there was a resentful gaze like a resentful wife staring at him. Zhun Xiaoyao said again, I wonder if I can make another request. Say it. The daughter king glanced at Zhun Xiaoyao. Let her join us. Zhun Xiaoyao pointed at Ling Yang. Ling Yang's expression still didn't change much, but the corners of her mouth couldn't help but curl up slightly. Damn, one is not enough. You want a dragon and 2 phoenixes? Lu Fugui widened his small eyes. Although he had 300 wives and concubines and often exercised with many people. But even 300 wives and concubines added together couldn't compare to Ling Yang and the daughter king. As for Qin Yuanqing, his face had already turned purple. He originally planned to show off in front of Ling Yang and curry favor. But now, he had become a joke. Soon, Zhun Xiaoyao, the daughter king, and Ling Yang came to the deepest part of the baptismal pool. The environment was very quiet, and there were only the 3 of them. Zhun Xiaoyao was able to tell that the place was an extremely special place for cultivation. Even just by breathing, he could feel that his soul was clear and his body was slowly becoming transparent like a crystal. As long as you are a human, you will always have flaws. You can't reach absolute perfection. This is the shackle of heaven and earth. My body and primordial spirit are almost perfect. Now, if I cultivate with the baptismal water, my talent and comprehension should be able to reach a higher level. Zhun Xiaoyao thought to himself. The effect of the baptismal pool couldn't immediately increase his cultivation. But it could improve his talent and comprehension to a higher level. Zhun Xiaoyao had always been a freak among freaks of nature. If he could reach a higher level, it would be unimaginable. Would probably reach the legendary level of the King of Anomalies. That kind of existence was able to threaten the stability of the heavenly axiom, and there were only a few of existence. Children of the dimension, people of great providence, protagonists of destiny, in terms of talent and cultivation speed, they were all trash in front of the King of Anomalies. Even the 8 children of heaven of the Heaven clan were blessed by the heavenly Tao and had fused with the heavenly Tao crown. But in front of the King of Anomalies, it was definitely not enough. And Zhun Xiaoyao's current aptitude was developing in this direction. As an exception, I have already attracted the attention of the immortal domain's will. If I really become the King of Anomalies, I'm afraid the heavenly clan won't be able to sit still. Zhun Xiaoyao thought to himself. He felt that if he really succeeded in the baptismal pool, the 8 gods wouldn't be able to sit still and would come out to deal with him. Then, the 3 of them didn't say much and fell into cultivation. Ling Yang and his daughter, the king, both fell into the baptismal pool. The wet dress outlined a faintly discernible beautiful curve. It could be said to be seductive. It could be said that if any man were to come here, they would definitely be tempted. Zhun Xiaoyao was very calm, and his attention was focused on cultivation. As time passed, Jun Xiaoyaro felt that his originally flawless body and primordial spirit seemed to have become even clearer. It was as if he had merged with heaven and earth. Every inch of his skin, bones, flesh, and blood seemed to be in accordance with the perfect Great Tao. This seemed to be the most perfect treasure body in the world. Even the incarnation of the heavenly Tao was only SOSO. Most importantly, Jun Xiaoyao's primordial spirit of 3 lives was also becoming clearer. He could clearly feel the bottleneck of his primordial spirit. That was the bottleneck from the boundless level to the eternal sand level. Although Jun Xiaoyaro had already absorbed a large amount of soul power of the heroic spirits in the void sky realm, at that time, he hadn't broken through to the heavenly venerable realm, so his primordial spirit was still stuck at the last step. But now, Jun Xiaoyaro had already reached the heavenly venerable realm. He only needed one last burst of energy to break through to the eternal sand level. At that time, his primordial spirit would be as numerous as the sand in the Ganges River. It would be even more difficult to destroy his primordial spirit. However, I need one last bit of strength, a thought flashed through Jun Xiaoyao's mind. Wasn't there still the divine soul pool in the 3 great secret realms? That should be able to help his primordial spirit break through to the eternal sand level. However, for now, Jun Xiaoyaro was still focused on the transformation of his talent. With many devouring abilities, Jun Xiaoyaro could naturally easily refine the energy of the baptismal pool. However, the fluctuations of swallowing and absorbing made Ling Yang and the queen look sideways. Jun Xiaoyaro is too ferocious when he cultivates, isn't he? Ling Yang couldn't help but think to herself. Suddenly, she thought of something. Was Jun Xiaoyaro also so difficult to satisfy in other aspects? Ling Yang's pretty face blushed. It was better to keep such a terrible thought in her heart. After an unknown period of time, at a certain moment, Jun Xiaoyaro felt that his body, including his primordial spirit, seemed to have turned into transparent crystals. Every single bit, every single inch, was incomparably transparent. It was as if every cell was in line with the perfect Great Tao. This kind of perfection did not come from the Great Tao rules of the immortal realm. Instead, it came from his own inner universe. That was his own Tao. As Jun Xiaoyaro was having the strange feeling, a thunderous voice suddenly exploded in the 9 heavens immortal realm. What's going on? What's going on? Could it be that an expert is undergoing the tribulation of the martial monarch realm? No, it feels like the heavens are in rage. The experts in the 9 heavens immortal realm were astounded when they heard the voice. However, they were confused. They had no idea what was going on. Only some of the older, more ancient antiques were astounded by the situation. Could it be that someone like that has really appeared? Previously, the son of God of the Jun clan was known as the rare exception. He even dared to challenge the heavens. Could it be that someone even more talented than the son of God of the Jun clan has appeared? As I thought, all kinds of monsters have appeared in this golden era. The king of rare exception is someone that can threaten the stability of the heavens path. Just as many old antiques were bewildered, in an extremely mysterious sealed ancient world. An old man in a blue robe was sitting in front of an ancient wall. There were countless light dots and lines on the ancient wall. The light dots and lines were constantly flickering and flowing, as if they were the veins of fate for all living beings. Suddenly, a small black dot appeared in the middle of it. It looked extremely tiny, weak, and insignificant, like a black dot the size of an ant. However, the black dot was not connected to any light dots or lines, as if it was an independent existence. It was impossible to tell what kind of existence the black dot was. However, the old man in a blue robe frowned slightly when he saw the black dot. As the one facing the wall of the Heaven tribe, he knew what it meant. A king of rare exception that could threaten the stability of the heavens path had appeared. Chapter 1249. What was an anomaly? Those that did not make sense were called anomalies. And what did it mean by not making sense? He had a heaven-defying cultivation speed and terrifying comprehension ability. His talent far surpassed that of ordinary monstrous geniuses. He did not walk the ordinary path of Tao validation. They might even be able to jump out of the 3 realms and the 5 elements. There might only be a handful of such existences in every epoch. Jun Xiaoyaro was publicly acknowledged as an anomaly in the Nine Heavens immortal realm. Even his father, Jun Wuhui, was considered an anomaly by many. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to be so outstanding. However, there was something even scarier than the anomaly. It was the king of anomalies. Rumors said it could threaten the order of the heavenly Tao. If it was said that there were 3 to 5 outliers in every era, then there would be 3 to 5 outliers. However, the king of anomalies might only appear once every few eras or even longer. The existence could control their own fate and break through the limits. They would become unbelievably strong. They might even create their own worlds and form their own heavenly Tao. They would not be restricted by the rules of the heavenly Tao. It was the reason why the king of anomalies could threaten the stability of the heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao would not allow anything beyond its control in this world. Meanwhile, the Heaven tribe claimed to be the people of the heavens. They were loyal to the heavens. The old man in a blue robe was the person facing the wall of the Heaven tribe. He was a great authority. As the person facing the wall, his only responsibility was to sit in front of the stone wall of fate and observe the heavens and earth. He would immediately discover anything that could threaten the stability of the heavenly Tao. However, the little black dot was the king of anomalies. Even though he was discovered, no one knew who he was. I can't predict his fate. How is that possible? The person facing the wall of the Heaven tribe was astounded. Even though the king of anomalies was extremely rare, it was not like they had never appeared before. The Heaven tribe had once eliminated one with their own hands. The king of anomalies might be extremely outstanding, but it was still possible to eliminate them before they reached their full potential. Could it be? The person facing the wall of the Heaven tribe recalled something even more forbidden. His expression also became a little more solemn. He let out a sigh. Sigh, this is a prosperous era, or a chaotic era. Everything is changing, but the heavenly Tao exists forever. After a sigh, the Grey Clan cultivator fell silent. On the other side, in the ancient world of the Grey Clan called the Grey World, a voice rang out from somewhere. Oh! His Excellency facing the wall has announced that the King of Anomalies has appeared. It just so happens that this Daoist wants to make a trip out of the realm to settle some matters. You took away my opportunity and killed my servant. Jun Xiaoyaro of the Jun family, how much longer can you run rampant in front of me? The owner of this voice was none other than Heavenly Cycle Daozi, one of the 8 scions of the heavens. And there were 7 other existences with the same status as him. A battle between the 8 sons of heaven to hunt down the king of Divergent was about to begin. Of course, this was before the identity of the king of anomalies was revealed. As an anomaly, Jun Xiaoyaro, who had once fought against the heavens, would obviously receive the attention of the 8 sons of heaven. The outside world naturally had no idea. Beneath the surface of the water, there was a huge force hidden behind the scenes, the Grey Clan. He was finally going to step onto the stage in this golden era. The appearance of the 8 sons of heaven, who were blessed by the heavens, was enough to crush almost all the seed-level prodigies in the mystic realm. Except for a few prodigies from a few forces, such as the Xian Ting, the underworld, the Jun family, some Archean royalty, and the holy spirits. The other prodigies, including some seed-level prodigies, were not even qualified to fight against the 8 sons of heaven. And even the prodigies of these major forces were only qualified to fight against the 8 sons of heaven. Jun Xiaoyaro, who was in the Forgotten Nation, naturally did not know about the changes in the outside world. He also did not know that his cultivation would cause such a huge commotion in the Grey Clan. Even the 8 sons of heaven were about to appear because of this. At this moment, in the baptism pool, Jun Xiaoyaro had a special feeling. His body was a body tree. His heart was as clear as a mirror. Every move seemed to fit the perfect great Tao. Previously, he had been comprehending the sacred physique phenomenon through the desolate emperor's blood. But just like that, he suddenly had a kind of understanding of the remaining 2 sacred physique phenomena. It did not mean that he directly comprehended them all at once. It was that he had accumulated a lot of knowledge before. Now, after the baptism and transformation, everything was integrated. He completely comprehended the last two phenomena of the sacred physique of the ancients. Could it be that my talent is not even enough to be described as an ancient anomaly, but I've become the king of anomalies? Jun Xiaoyaro thought to himself as he experienced the changes in his body and primordial spirit. His body was like a body tree, transparent and clear, and fit the great Tao. And his primordial spirit was like a mirror, pure and flawless. That bottleneck no longer existed. Next, as long as he had enough energy, he could break through to the eternal sand-level primordial spirit. That would be a new world. But why do I feel that even the king of anomalies is not the end of the talent? Jun Xiaoyaro was doubtful. His body was like a body tree, and his heart was as clear as a mirror. This was definitely an extremely high great Tao realm. But it was not the highest. Well, it's hard to find a king of anomalies in many eras. Now, it's enough. Jun Xiaoyaro did not mind. He was also confident that in the future, his talent would definitely reach the ultimate perfection. Because his goal was to surpass all the existences of ancient and modern times and reach the absolute supreme realm. After the baptism, the daughter king and Ling Yang both looked at Jun Xiaoyaro in surprise. Although Jun Xiaoyaro was still the same as before, wearing a black robe and looking very calm and reserved. But they always felt that Jun Xiaoyaro had some kind of indescribable change. It seems that you have also gained a lot, sir. The daughter king smiled slightly. It was very beautiful. Compared to before, her attitude had obviously changed. After attaining the king of anomalies aptitude, Jun Xiaoyao's primordial spirit was also like a mirror. He could see things more clearly than before. He began to see some clues. You flatter me. Thank you, Your Majesty, for allowing me to train here. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled faintly. Watching the interaction between the two, Ling Yang became an outsider. She was a little unhappy in her heart. Well, let's go. Ling Yang snorted coldly. The daughter king did not mind. A burst of light flowed on the two women's delicate bodies, and the moisture was immediately evaporated. The three of them walked out of the baptism pool. At this time, the others were almost done with their baptism. Qin Yuanqing, Lu Fugue, and the others also had some gains. Especially Lu Fugue, he directly used a spatial artifact to store a small pond of baptism water. This made Yi Hua and the other women of the daughter kingdom look at him with disdain. Seeing Jun Xiaoyaro and the two women walk out, Qin Yuanqing was naturally jealous. But he was not stupid. Now he could be considered honest and did not dare to casually mock Jun Xiaoyaro. Jun Xiaoyaro did not care about him at all. It was not that Jun Xiaoyaro had become a saint. It was that this kind of ant, he did not put them in his eyes at all. He was only willing to move his finger to those who could be in his eyes. At this time, Yi Hua said, Your Majesty, are we going back home now? The female king subconsciously glanced at Jun Xiaoyaro when she heard what he said. Jun Xiaoyaro said indifferently, Since there are 3 great secret realms, why only fight for one? Hearing this, all the women of the daughter kingdom were stunned. Did he want to swallow all of them? Chapter 1250. Jun Xiaoyaro naturally wouldn't give up just like that. He still needed to use the divine soul pond to break through the primordial spirit level. And the flying fairy waterfall was obviously a good thing. It was very likely that in the entire forgotten land outside the forgotten nation, these were the 3 greatest opportunities. But when the people of Womanland heard this, they were all extremely surprised. After all, there had never been a nation that could occupy 2 secret realms. I think that's a good idea. The daughter king nodded slightly. General Yi Hua and the others wanted to dissuade her, but when they saw the look on her face, they knew that it was useless. Next, after everyone reorganized, they headed to the next secret realm. And at the divine soul pond, they met the demons and centaurs of the 9 great nations. But with Jun Xiaoyaro and the others, the result was naturally obvious. The 2 nations fled in panic. Jun Xiaoyaro and the others also entered the divine soul pond. It was the same as at the baptism pool. Jun Xiaoyaro activated the devour law, and the vast energy of the divine soul pond was absorbed by him to break through the shackles of the primordial spirit. In the end, Jun Xiaoyaro only heard the sound of glass breaking in his mind. In an instant, he felt that the world was clear. In his eyes, everything seemed to have nowhere to hide. Even a speck of dust floating in the void thousands of miles away was incomparably fine in his perception. Jun Xiaoyaro felt that the power of his primordial spirit seemed to have formed a vast and mighty river that stretched for hundreds of millions of miles, deep into the end of the universe. His primordial spirit level had finally broken through the boundless level and reached the eternal sand level. Eternal sand level primordial spirit. With a thought, the primordial spirit was as numerous as the sands of the Ganges River, endless and endless. It could be said that among the seven supremes, even a Chaos Dao master wanted to kill Jun Xiaoyao's primordial spirit. It was an extremely difficult thing. Because Jun Xiaoyaro could instantly disperse his primordial spirit and turn it into countless primordial spirit light spots. Even a Chaos Dao master would find it difficult to destroy all the primordial spirit light in an instant. This was the heaven-defying aspect of a eternal sand-level primordial spirit. Otherwise, why would it be called the eternal sands grade? And there was another point. When deducing any cultivation technique or mystique, the eternal sand grade primordial spirit also had terrifying deductive abilities. If the boundless primordial spirit was compared to a supercomputer, that eternal sand-level primordial spirit was like countless supercomputers. There was a qualitative difference between the two. Jun Xiaoyaro exhaled softly. After breaking through to the eternal sands primordial spirit stage, it would be much faster for him to create his own cultivation technique or continue to understand his own origin Dao mystique. Generally speaking, only quasi-emperors and above who specialize in the cultivation of the primordial spirit can cultivate a eternal sand-level primordial spirit. As for me, I already cultivated it when I was in the celestial venerable realm. Jun Xiaoyaro thought to himself. A minor 1,000 realms of the innerverse, and a primordial spirit of the eternal sands. These weren't things that could be cultivated at the 7th level of the supreme martial artist realm. However, Jun Xiaoyaro had managed to cultivate all of them. It could be said that if one didn't talk about realms, even some quasi-emperor experts might not be able to compare to his accumulations. This was because even for a quasi-emperor, it was very difficult for them to have an inner universe at the level of a small chiliocosm. After breaking through, Jun Xiaoyao's soul perception was more than 1,000 times stronger than before. The world seemed to have become transparent in his eyes. Nothing could escape his perception. And when he looked at the Daughter King, he finally understood. Just where did that strange feeling come from? The Forgotten Nation is really interesting. Jun Xiaoyaro didn't immediately point it out. Instead, he became more and more interested in the flying immortal waterfall. Sir, are you thinking about the flying immortal waterfall? Among the 3 great mystic realms, the flying immortal waterfall is the place with the most intense battles. The Yu Nation, the Spirit Nation, the Soul Tribe, and other strong nations will all fight for the flying immortal waterfall, the Daughter King said. It's okay. As long as you trust me, we will fight for it, Jun Xiaoyaro said. The Daughter King had a long hair and a beautiful face. She looked at Jun Xiaoyaro with her beautiful eyes and said, I can feel that Sir's aura is much stronger than before. I believe you. That's good. Jun Xiaoyaro also nodded slightly. When Ling Yuan saw this scene, her heart was filled with jealousy. She actually felt a little regretful. If she had known, she wouldn't have brought Jun Xiaoyaro here. When they heard that the Daughter King was going to fight for the flying immortal waterfall, General Yi Hua and the others didn't know what to say. They all looked at Jun Xiaoyaro. This outsider's strength was so terrifying. But they couldn't go against the Daughter King's orders. Soon, after a round of reorganization, they set off again. The flying immortal waterfall was located at the core of the Forgotten Nation. Among the 3 great mystic realms, it was the most fiercely contested. It was rumored that the flying immortal waterfall contained the blood of a remnant immortal. Only when the Chaos Fiend star appeared would the mystic realms, including the flying immortal waterfall, be revealed. This was an oasis in the middle of the Gobi Desert. The spiritual energy was dense and the brilliance lingered, as if it was a crystal gem embedded in the Gobi Desert. This was the flying immortal waterfall of the 3 great mystic realms. Looking around, there was a waterfall in the oasis, like the Milky Way falling from the 9 heavens. Immortal energy lingered, and the light of the laws was dazzling. Vaguely, there were various auspicious divine beasts, such as the mystic bird, the Chileen, the vermilion bird, the Kuan Peng, and so on. It made people understand at a glance that if they sat cross-legged and cultivated here, the benefits would be endless. At this moment, the earth was trembling. In the distance, a black army attacked. It was the team of Womanland. That's the flying immortal waterfall? Jun Xiaoyaro took a look and thought to himself. The baptism pool transformed his talent into the king of anomalies. The divine soul pool made his primordial spirit break through to the eternal sand level. And the most mysterious flying immortal waterfall, what kind of transformation could it bring to him? Jun Xiaoyaro was looking forward to it. However, at this moment, in other directions, there were also vast and mighty teams rushing over. Regarding this, Womanland had already expected it. If anyone stepped close to the flying immortal waterfall, they would immediately attract the attention of the other countries. The first to arrive was the Spirit Nation. Similarly, there were hundreds of thousands of people. And to Ling Yang and the others' surprise, in the Spirit Nation, they saw a familiar figure. It was actually the people of immortal Tsungjie's unified lineage. The leader was naturally immortal Tsungjie's seed, Kang Ju. In addition, there was also the Son of Truth and Mo Yenyu of the Mo family. The Son of Truth. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were deep. Enemies were bound to meet. That little girl is also here. Lu Fugue's expression was also not very good. Mo Yenyu and the others had obviously also noticed this side. When she saw Lu Fugue, a cold smile appeared on her face. Although Ling Yang was present, this kind of opportunity fight would not be given away just because Ling Yang was here. Then, one of the 9 great nations, the Ocean Territory, also came, and the ones cooperating with them were Ming Ya of Gonggong Immortal Tsungjie and other prodigies. Then, the Soul Race also came, and with them were the prodigies of Xingtian Immortal Tsungjie, Xing Yunshan, Long Xuani, and the others were also there. Finally, the people of Yu Nation also showed up. And with them were the prodigies of Fuxi Immortal Tsungjie. However, Di Haotian, Jiyu Tiezi, and the others were not there. Leading them were the prodigies of the 18 steeds of Yang Yun, Purple Flame Heavenly Monarch, and the others. In an instant, the 5 nations and forces gathered outside the flying immortal waterfall. Yi Hua's expression turned a little ugly. Shouldn't we not get involved? Chapter 1251. Don't worry, let's wait and see. The daughter king was rather calm. She glanced at Jun Xiaoyaro from the corner of her eye. For some reason, this man who had been hiding his identity all this while. She always had an inexplicable confidence. It was as if no matter how difficult the situation was, he would be able to solve it easily. Even now, it was the same. There was not the slightest hint of panic on his body. Could it be that he still has some tricks up his sleeve? The daughter king couldn't help but think. Right now, Yu Nation, Spirit Nation, Soul Nation, Ocean Territory, and Womanland. The 5 nations were fighting for supremacy. One could imagine that if they didn't have any tricks up their sleeves, Womanland would suffer heavy losses. This was because the other 4 nations were considered to be relatively strong among the 9 nations. If Womanland insisted on fighting for supremacy, there wouldn't be any benefits. Young Emperor Ling Yang, looks like you're also interested in the soaring immortal waterfall. Xingyun, god of Xingtian Immortal Orthodoxy, had a faint smile on his face. In the outside world, with Ling Yang's identity, even the seed-level prodigies of other immortal orthodoxies had to respect him. But this was the forgotten nation. In front of an opportunity, no one would be modest. Even more so, no one would give up the opportunity just because of Ling Yang's identity. If you all want to fight, of course, it's a fair competition. Ling Yang was also very relaxed. She didn't use her identity as a young emperor to pressure others, because she knew it was useless. The soaring immortal waterfall is rumored to contain the blood of a remnant immortal. It's the greatest opportunity in this forgotten nation. It's indeed interesting. Kang Ju of Tsungjie Immortal Orthodoxy said lightly. His aura was restrained, and the surface of his robe seemed to be written with many ancient words. This immortal orthodoxy originated from a mythical emperor who created words, and each word had an inexplicable power. On the other side, Purple Flame Lord of Heaven's attitude was rather casual. He looked at Ling Yang and said, "Don't worry, you're the current generation's young emperor after all. When the time comes, I'll leave you some face." Purple Flame Lord of Heaven's personality, he was the type to be arrogant. Even when facing Di Haotian, he had a desire to challenge and not be too respectful. Not to mention Ling Yang. Ling Yang's face was cold. After that, there wasn't much nonsense to be said. The air was filled with a murderous aura. The competition between the 5 countries was definitely intense. However, just when the atmosphere was as tense as a string, Jun Xiaoyaro calmly walked out. No one present was able to understand what was going on. Jun Xiaoyaro only said one sentence. "Don't look at me." The people from the other lineages and nations didn't know what this meant, so they were confused. However, the people of Womanland, Ling Yuan, and the others immediately reacted. She understood what Jun Xiaoyaro meant. None of them looked at Jun Xiaoyaro again. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his hand, and a ball of light appeared in his hand. In that radiance, it was a pure white flower bud that looked like a snow lotus from Tianshan Mountain. It was as if it was carved out of sparkling and translucent white jade. It was enshrouded in celestial energy and carried a sense of mystery. In the center of the flower bud, there seemed to be a mini celestial being dancing. Her dancing posture was graceful, and people couldn't help but be immersed in it. It was the flower of the past that Jun Xiaoyaro had plucked previously. Jun Xiaoyaro looked at this flower, but he didn't seem to be affected at all. He wasn't affected by the flower of the past before. Now that his primordial spirit had broken through and reached the eternal sand level, it was even more impossible for him to be affected by the flower of the past. As for the people of Womanland, they didn't look at that flower. However, the geniuses of the other 4 countries and immortal lineages all subconsciously looked at the flower of the past. Then, many people's expressions froze. Their eyes suddenly revealed a look of confusion. "If you don't make a move now, when will you?" Jun Xiaoyaro said indifferently. The queen immediately reacted, and her beautiful eyes revealed a look of surprise. Is this his method? Although it's simple, it's the most direct and effective. The queen waved her arm. The army of Womanland immediately moved. Some of the weaker cultivators of the other 4 countries were completely immersed in it and couldn't extricate themselves. Even some of the stronger cultivators and strong-willed experts were shaken. Of course, not everyone was powerless to resist. For example, the Purple Flame Heavenly Lord, Xingyun Shen, Long Xuani, Kang Ju, Ming Ya, and other supreme geniuses all used their own methods. They had some special protective Dharma artifacts or primordial spirit weapons that could barely maintain a trace of clarity in their minds. Damn it, we've been tricked. What's that? Retreat first. If they knew in advance, they might have taken precautions and wouldn't be in this state. However, things happened too suddenly, and they could only retreat temporarily. However, Ling Yang and the others obviously wouldn't hold back. As the young emperor of Xianting, Ling Yang wouldn't kill all of these immortal lineages. However, he could still injure them and make them lose their competitiveness. For a moment, the scene was chaotic. The army of Womanland also made a move. The armies of the other 4 countries were either mesmerized by the flowers of the past or fled in panic. They were utterly defeated. Who would have thought that Jun Xiaoyaro was able to secure victory with a single flower? "Little girl, didn't you want to deal with me? Now you want to run away?" Seeing the graceful Mo Yenyu take out her primordial spirit weapon and try to escape, Lu Fugue gritted his teeth and sneered. The Mo family and the Lu family were competitors. Both of them were extremely famous forging families. Lu Fugue immediately took out all kinds of Dharma artifacts and suppressed Mo Yenyu. "You damn fatty." Mo Yenyu's beautiful cheeks flushed red with anger. She gritted her teeth. "You shrewish little girl, who told you to pick on me every day? Now you're going to fall into my hand." Lu Fugue smiled evilly, and the fat on his face trembled. Mo Yenyu's face turned pale. If she really fell into the hands of this disgusting fatty, she would definitely go crazy. In the end, Lu Fugui took out a net made of 10,000 years old silk and caught Mo Yenyu. Kang Ju, the son of truth, and the others who were on the same side as her didn't care about her. Because in the end, they were just partners. Now that the situation was critical, they naturally wouldn't risk their lives to save Mo Yenyu. An ancient character appeared between Kang Ju's eyebrows, flickering with brilliance. This allowed him to maintain a trace of clarity in his mind. The Son of Truth was a special primordial spirit, so he also had some resistance to this kind of soul-level confusion. However, in front of him, a black-robed figure suddenly appeared. Damn it! Seeing the newcomer, the Son of Truth's face changed. Why did the black-robed man target him? Jun Xiaoyaro looked at the Son of Truth in front of him and sneered. The Son of Truth thought that this trial was safe because he knew that Jun Xiaoyaro couldn't enter the Forgotten Kingdom. But he guessed wrong. Without the slightest hesitation, Jun Xiaoyaro pressed his palm down and activated his eternal sand-level primordial spirit at the same time. Jun Xiaoyaro didn't have a good impression of this holy orchid sect that had been plotting to get his Dharma body. How is this possible? Eternal sand-level primordial spirit. The Son of Truth was scared out of his wits. Even if he had a special primordial spirit, the level of his primordial spirit was far from reaching the eternal sand level. How many people among the 7 supreme realms could cultivate a eternal sand-level primordial spirit? Could this be a quasi-emperor? The Son of Truth inexplicably had an absurd idea in his heart. But before he could think too much, Jun Xiaoyao's move suppressed him. The current Jun Xiaoyaro was no longer the same as before. Eternal sand-level primordial spirit, king of variants, sacred body, Tao fetus. All of this wasn't something that the current Son of Truth could bear. Just as the Son of Truth was about to resist, he heard a sound that sounded like a nightmare. Son of Truth, everything is over. This familiar voice made the Son of Truth's mind buzz in disbelief. A hint of fear even flashed in his eyes. Jun, Poochie. He had just spat out a word when Jun Xiaoyao's attack suppressed him. There was no suspense. The Son of Truth's physical body was directly shattered, and his primordial spirit of faith was also scattered and fled in all directions. Chapter 1252. If an ordinary primordial spirit was scattered, it would definitely be destroyed. However, the primordial spirit of faith was a special primordial spirit. Even if the primordial spirit was scattered, it could be restored with the power of faith. That was why the primordial spirit of faith was so powerful. However, Jun Xiaoyaro remained unfazed when he saw what was happening. He also activated his eternal sand-level primordial spirit. Instantly, the power of his primordial spirit seemed to have turned into billions of light spots. It directly destroyed the primordial spirit of faith. The primordial spirit of faith was supported by the power of faith. It was difficult to destroy it. However, Jun Xiaoyaro was going to use his eternal sand-level primordial spirit to destroy every single primordial spirit of faith. This could definitely be said to be a ruthless extermination. The powerful eternal sand-level primordial spirit suppressed the entire place. The remaining Sky Prides who were still struggling were shocked when they saw this. Who is that black-robed man? He has such a terrifying primordial spirit. As expected of the young Emperor Ling Yang, he was able to invite such a person. We admit defeat. The top Sky Prides of the other celestial heritages also took the opportunity to retreat. Of course, the forces of the 4 great nations could not escape because most of the living beings could not resist the power of the past world flower. Meanwhile, the primordial spirit of the Child of Truth was completely destroyed by Jun Xiaoyao's eternal sand-level primordial spirit. When the primordial spirit of the Child of Truth was destroyed, in the ancestral land of the Gulan sect in the 9 heavens immortal realm, a furious voice was heard. Who is it? Who dares to kill our Child of Truth? He entered the Forgotten Kingdom. Is it the work of the Xianting's Sky Prides? No, even if it's for the sake of our sect, the Xianting's Sky Prides would not kill him. Then he must have encountered some unknown danger. However, he has the primordial spirit of faith. It shouldn't be that easy to destroy it. Someone must have done it on purpose. Some of the important figures in the Gulan sect were furious. Their Gulen Holy Church had carefully nurtured a powerful seed that had completely fallen. It was definitely a great loss. Besides, they would never have guessed that the person who killed him was Jun Xiaoyaro, who was rumored to be recuperating in the Jun family's ancestral land. Within the Forgotten Land. After killing the Son of Truth, Jun Xiaoyaro had also absorbed and refined the essence of the Son of Truth's primordial spirit through his devouring power. Instantly, he gained a deeper understanding of the power of faith. It would also be easier for him to use the Dharmakaya of the gods of faith. Furthermore, the Son of Truth's immense power of faith had also been absorbed by Jun Xiaoyaro and absorbed into the inner universe. In his inner universe, the sea of faith that shone with golden light had doubled in size. In the center of the ocean of faith, the god's Dharma body was like a sun. It sat there motionlessly, silently accumulating faith energy. There's quite a lot of faith power, but it's still not enough, Jun Xiaoyaro thought to himself. In the future, he would have to think of a way to collect a large amount of faith power. After this, I should find a time to officially integrate the imperial court and expand my influence to gain more faith. Jun Xiaoyaro had another idea. He had never lacked wisdom. After completely killing the Son of Truth, Jun Xiaoyaro looked around and found that most of the others had fled. It was a pity that Purple Flame Lord of Heaven and the others hadn't been killed. Because Jun Xiaoyaro had already found out. The one in charge of communicating with the taboo family of the 9 heavens was Purple Flame Lord of Heaven. Jun Xiaoyaro was determined to kill him no matter what. After all, he was the instigator of that assassination. However, he wasn't in a hurry. As long as he was still in the Forgotten Kingdom, he wouldn't be able to escape death. At this moment, the situation was set. The living beings of the 4 great nations had either died or fled. Jun Xiaoyaro put away the flower of the past. This flower was extremely strange and mysterious. Jun Xiaoyaro vaguely felt that the appearance of this flower in the Forgotten Kingdom shouldn't be a coincidence. It had an unusual meaning. At this moment, a fragrant wind blew over. At some point in time, his daughter was already standing beside him. "Sir, you are indeed an extraordinary person. It's just a little trick," Jun Xiaoyaro said. On the other side, Ling Yang didn't say a word. Although she had succeeded in seizing the opportunity, why was she not happy about it? "Let's go check out the opportunity," Jun Xiaoyaro said. Then, they also came to the Flying Immortal Waterfall. It was rumored that the Flying Immortal Waterfall had fused with the blood of a remnant immortal, which was extremely helpful for cultivation. After a little enlightenment, Jun Xiaoyaro was surprised to find that in this Flying Immortal Waterfall, his understanding of the various laws became deeper and deeper. This Flying Immortal Waterfall was extremely helpful for enlightenment. Furthermore, there was also an extremely dense amount of energy contained within. Jun Xiaoyaro could use the energy to store it for future breakthroughs. Just like before, Jun Xiaoyaro, his daughter the king, and Ling Yang cultivated in the deepest part of the Flying Immortal Waterfall. The others were in the middle and outer area. Now, even Qin Yuanqing didn't dare to show the slightest dissatisfaction with Jun Xiaoyaro. He saw with his own eyes that Jun Xiaoyaro killed the Son of Truth with a casual wave of his hand. One had to know that even he didn't have much of a chance of winning against the Son of Truth. Now, Qin Yuanqing finally knew that he wasn't even qualified to catch Yi Shiwen's eye. Therefore, his previous ridicule was like talking to the air. On the other side, Jun Xiaoyaro was in the depths of the Flying Immortal Waterfall. At the same time, he used the devouring power to absorb the energy of the remnant immortal's blood. At the same time, he began to comprehend the laws. When Jun Xiaoyaro broke through to the heavenly venerable realm, he had comprehended 18 laws. That was already a record. Now, Jun Xiaoyaro wanted to continue comprehending more laws. Every time he comprehended a law, a ball of energy would be born in his body. And in the end, the ball of energy would turn into an innate godfiend. In other words, they were the most primitive creatures in Jun Xiaoyao's inner universe. They could grow with Jun Xiaoyao's strength. In the end, they would become one of Jun Xiaoyao's trump cards. Jun Xiaoyao even imagined comprehending 3,000 laws and evolving 3,000 primordial godfiends. Every primordial godfiend controlled a law. If they were all used together, the power would be unimaginable. After making up his mind, Zhang Xiaoyao also immersed himself in cultivation. He had the monstrous aptitude of the king of variants and the help of the flying immortal waterfall. Comprehending the Tao was as simple as eating and drinking for Zhang Xiaoyao. He first comprehended the simplest laws, such as the elemental Tao of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. Soon, a crimson law began to appear in his body. That was the law of fire. Then, a faint blue law appeared. That was the law of water. Of course, it wasn't too difficult for Zhang Xiaoyao to comprehend these most basic laws. The truly difficult ones were the laws of time, karma, and eternity. However, Zhang Xiaoyao wasn't in a hurry. Comprehending 3,000 laws was obviously not something that could be achieved in a short period of time. Even a great emperor hadn't heard of anyone who could control 3,000 great Tao. Zhang Xiaoyao was just starting. A journey of thousands of miles began with a single step. But without a doubt, Zhang Xiaoyao's strength continued to soar. After passing through the 3 great mystic realms, Zhang Xiaoyao's cultivation realm didn't increase. However, his strength had undergone a qualitative change from before. If the people of Xianting found out that Zhang Xiaoyao had snatched the opportunity of a Xianting prodigy right under their noses, what would their expressions be like? Chapter 1253. Time passed bit by bit. An unknown amount of time passed. At a certain moment, Zhang Xiaoyao slowly opened his eyes. There was a deep look in his eyes. 30 laws, Zhang Xiaoyao muttered to himself in his heart. That's right, during this period of time, Zhang Xiaoyao had comprehended 12 laws again. Of course, these laws were not like the reincarnation, void, life and death, creation, and other laws that Zhang Xiaoyao had comprehended before. Instead, they were the most basic elemental laws such as metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. Among the 3,000 laws, there were actually differences in strength. For example, the weakest was the most basic elemental laws such as metal, wood, water, fire, earth, and other elements. If these 5 were combined into one to form the 5 elemental laws, it would be considered a higher level law. Further up were the supreme laws such as reincarnation, karma, creation, life and death. The 18 laws that Zhang Xiaoyao had comprehended before were almost all of these supreme laws. This was also one of the reasons why Zhang Xiaoyao was so heaven-defying that he could kill an immortal at will. Now, Zhang Xiaoyao had a new goal, which was to completely comprehend the 3,000 laws. Previously, the ancestors had taught me that the so-called Tao to become an emperor was to find a path that belonged to oneself from the great Tao that one had already cultivated and comprehended. For example, the king of assassins used killing to attain his Tao. His Tao was the Tao of massacre. As for the ancient Chaos Emperor, he had never tasted victory in the first half of his life and had never tasted defeat in the second half of his life. His Tao was to never stop fighting. What Zhang Xiaoyao needed to do was to find his own Tao. However, before that, comprehending enough Tao would obviously be of great help to him in comprehending his own Tao. This flying fairy waterfall is indeed a great opportunity, Zhang Xiaoyao thought to himself. Even with his monstrous talent, if he did not have such an opportunity, it would not be so easy to comprehend 12 basic laws in one go. After that, Zhang Xiaoyao probed his inner universe again. He found that there were 12 more balls of energy. It was obvious that Zhang Xiaoyao's own comprehension of the Tao had begun to take effect in the innerverse, which had given rise to the 12 balls of light. What surprised Zhang Xiaoyao was that the 18 balls of light from before had actually hatched. 18 carnate primordial chaos godfiends broke out of their shells. They were all the laws that Zhang Xiaoyao had comprehended, and they were manifestations of the innerverse. Their current strength is at the true God realm. Zhang Xiaoyao thought to himself as he sensed the power of the 18 primordial fiend gods. Right now, to him, true God realm did not seem to be much. However, it should be known that they were born true gods. In other words, the lowest level was the true God. What did this mean? His future potential was limitless. As long as Zhang Xiaoyao's cultivation did not stop, there would be no limit to the cultivation of these innate chaos gods and devils. This was the most terrifying part. Think about it. If Jun Xiaoyaro were to break through to the Great Emperor realm in the future, in his inner universe, there were 3,000 innate gods comparable to great emperors. Once they attacked, it would be the combined attack of 3,000 great emperors. It would be almost effortless for them to defeat the great emperors of the same level. When he thought of such a heaven-defying scene, even the experienced and knowledgeable Jun Xiaoyaro could not help but take a deep breath. Even he was shocked by his own thoughts. As for why there were so few great emperors who could do this, it was very simple. Firstly, not everyone was as monstrous as Jun Xiaoyaro, who had the possibility of comprehending 3,000 great Daos. Even for great emperors like the King of Assassins, it was already very good if they could comprehend hundreds of great Daos. After all, the requirement of the supremacy realm was only one law. Secondly, only the innerverse that belonged to one's own world could give birth to an innate chaos god. This was the most crucial point. One had to know that the innerverse of many great emperors in the immortal domain was actually borrowing the laws of the immortal domain. What about Jun Xiaoyaro? His innerverse had been expanded from God's origin. God's origin was a Tao that belonged to Jun Xiaoyaro alone. It was the Tao path that he had opened. It was unprecedented. There would be no successor. This was the reason why Jun Xiaoyaro could be so heaven-defying. After the 18 true immortal realm innate chaos gods broke out of their cocoons, they had been absorbing the power of the innerverse. Jun Xiaoyaro did not mind. In his innerverse, there were immortal source ancestral veins, foreign dragon veins, spring of life, celestial tree, 6 paths of reincarnation immortal root, world tree, and other top treasures. Therefore, he was not afraid of not having enough energy. After exploring for a while, Jun Xiaoyao's consciousness returned to reality. 2 pairs of beautiful eyes were also looking at him. It was Ling Yang and his daughter, the king. To be honest, they were very curious. After every opportunity in the mystic realm, they felt that Jun Xiaoyaro seemed to have a qualitative change. After that, everyone finished cultivating. The energy of the flying immortal waterfall was almost depleted. Of course, most of the energy was absorbed by Jun Xiaoyaro. After all, comprehending the laws was not so simple. Ling Yang's harvest was not small, and his aura was also getting stronger. Qin Yuanqing's handsome face was as black as the bottom of a pot. Because he was not in the core area, his harvest was not particularly great. Lu Fugue, on the other hand, did not care. Because he came here only to find various treasures, ancient artifacts, and so on. In his words, theoretically, as long as there were enough treasures, he could smash someone of the same level to death. At this point, the 3 mystic realms were over. The country that benefited the most was undoubtedly Womanland. All the women were very happy, and at the same time, countless eyes fell on Jun Xiaoyaro from time to time. They all knew that all the credit went to Jun Xiaoyaro. They were also curious about what kind of existence this man hiding under the black robe was. On the way back to the city, the king invited Jun Xiaoyaro to sit in the same carriage as her. Jun Xiaoyaro agreed. This made Ling Yuan feel even more depressed. She had a sour feeling. Lu Fugue dragged Mo Yenyu with the heaven's net with a lewd smile. Mo Yenyu's charming face was as pale as paper. Falling into Lu Fugue's hands was absolutely miserable for her. She seemed to be able to imagine what kind of disgusting tricks this fatty would use to deal with her. After all, Lu Fugue was known for his greed and lust. Many of his 300 beauties in his harem were directly snatched by him. After returning to Womanland, Womanland was going to hold a grand celebration banquet. And Jun Xiaoyaro, without a doubt, became a hero. I hope you won't be absent from tonight's banquet. The king's voice was soft and charming. It would be impolite for me to refuse. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled faintly. Then, he found Lu Fugue. I wonder if I can ask Brother Lu for a favor. Jun Xiaoyaro said lightly. What's the matter? Lu Fugue said casually. He was not a fool. Jun Xiaoyao's display of such power made it obvious that he was someone with a strong background. If it weren't because he heard that the Jun family's son of God was still recuperating in the Jun family's ancestral land. He even suspected that the person in front of him was the rumored son of God of the Jun family. Of course, even if he wasn't, The strength he showed was enough to make Lu Fugui want to befriend him. I wonder if you can give this woman to me. Jun Xiaoyaro pointed at Mo Yenyu. Chapter 1254. Hearing this, everyone present was a little surprised. After all, Jun Xiaoyaro didn't act like a lecherous person. Both the daughter and the king favored him, and his attitude was also very decent and didn't cross the line at all. Bro, you want her to? Lu Fugui was also confused. To be honest, although he caught Mo Yenyu, he couldn't really kill her. Otherwise, the Lu family and the Mo family would be sworn enemies. Now, although the two families were in a competitive relationship, they were not in a life-and-death relationship. After all, there were no eternal enemies, only eternal interests. Even the Xian Ting and the Jun family would join forces to eradicate heaven. It's useful. Jun Xiaoyaro said in a simple manner. Lu Fugui immediately understood and showed an expression that all men understood. Ahem, although I am extremely dissatisfied with this little girl and want to teach her a lesson myself. But since I'm interested in it, you can take it. Jun Xiaoyaro nodded slightly and pulled the net, wanting to take Mo Yenyu to a separate side hall. Bro, let me remind you, this little girl is arrogant and fierce, a mare that is difficult to tame. Lu Fugui reminded, fearing that Jun Xiaoyaro would be defeated by this woman. At this moment, everyone suddenly felt a chill. The source of it all was Ling Yuan. Ling Yang was extremely upset at this moment. Although she knew that Jun Xiaoyaro didn't want to come to Mo Yenyu for dirty things. But as long as she was a woman, she would always feel a little uncomfortable. This was because of the desire to monopolize. Although women all hoped that men would only be loyal to them. But there were also strong and weak desires to monopolize. For example, Jiang Xingyi was very gentle, considerate, and willing to tolerate Jiang Luoli. But if it were Ling Yang, she would never take the initiative to let Jun Xiaoyaro accept other women. This was the difference between women. Holy **T. Don't tell me that this guy really poached the divine child of the Jun family. Seeing Ling Yang's somewhat abnormal attitude, Lu Fugui muttered in his heart. Meanwhile, in a separate side hall, only Jun Xiaoyaro and Mo Yenyu were there. Mo Yenyu was still trapped in the heavenly net. Her figure was graceful and curvaceous. Now that he was trapped in the heavenly net, there was a different kind of temptation. Although Mo Yenyu wasn't as beautiful as Ling Yang, Jiang Xingyi, or Ji Qingyi, she was famous throughout the immortal region. However, she was also the daughter of the Mo family, an aristocratic family of blacksmiths. Her cold and arrogant personality, coupled with Linglong's hot figure, created a great contrast. She was like a beautiful and fierce mare that made people want to ride and conquer her. At this moment, Mo Yenyu's expression was cold. I'm Mo Yenyu from the Mo family. If you know what's good for you, you should know what to do. Mo Yenyu coldly spat out. In the beginning, she had fallen into despair after falling into Lu Fugui's hands. She also knew that Lu Fugui wouldn't really kill her. However, taking advantage of her was unavoidable. Now that it was in the hands of the black-robed man, it was better than in the hands of Lu Fugui. Her cold and arrogant attitude naturally returned. Jun Xiaoyaro wasn't in a hurry. He said calmly, I saved you from Lu Fugui, and this is your attitude. If it weren't for your tricks, I wouldn't have been caught by that damn fatty. Thinking of this, Mo Yenyu gritted her teeth. She wanted to chop Lu Fugui into pieces. As expected of the Mo family's miss. Your personality is just like what Lu Fugui said. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled. Mo Yenyu stared coldly at Jun Xiaoyaro and said, You don't need to force me to repay you. As long as you let me go, I'll give you immortal sources, treasures, cultivation techniques, anything. And quasi-theurge weapons. Do you want a quasi-theurge weapon? As long as you let me go, I can give it to you. Hearing Mo Yenyu's words, Jun Xiaoyaro really wanted to laugh. Indeed, as a blacksmith family, the Mo family's resources were far more abundant than ordinary clan of the ancients. However, compared to the Jun family, it was like showing off in front of an expert. Even the emperor's imperial court didn't lack emperor weapons. Mo Yenyu took out a quasi-theurge weapon as a bargaining chip, thinking that it was very attractive. However, In Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes, it was very laughable. I saved you, and you submit to me. Then, I can let you go. Zhang Xiaoyao finally revealed his purpose for being there. He wanted Mo Yenyu to submit to him, not for this person. It was for the Mo family. Zhang Xiaoyao already had an idea in his mind. He wanted to establish the 6 departments of the Emperor's imperial court. And in Zhang Xiaoyao's plan, one of the 6 departments was called the Department of Works. The so-called Department of Works was the department for refining artifacts, pills, forging talismans. As everyone knew, the forces that were best at forging artifacts in the immortal realm were the Lu family, the Mo family, and the Gongshu family. Previously, Zhang Xiaoyao was willing to communicate with Lu Fugue. Of course, it was also for the Lu family. Zhang Xiaoyao wanted to incorporate the Lu family and the Mo family into the Department of Works of the Emperor's imperial court. Of course, this was not something that could be done in a short time. However, Lu Fugue and Mo Yenyu were 2 breakthroughs. They were also the most outstanding talents of the 2 families. However, hearing Zhang Xiaoyao's words, Mo Yenyu's face immediately turned cold. You want me to submit to you? Impossible. Who do you think you are? Are you the son of God of the Zhang family? Do you have the right to make me submit? Mo Yenyu refused without even thinking about it. She had always been a proud mare. Not everyone had the right to ride on her. Haha, Zhang Xiaoyao laughed. Then, he directly withdrew the heavenly net. Mo Yenyu immediately reacted. Her jade-like hand touched her dark purple hair bun and took out the purple jade hairpin. The purple jade hairpin instantly turned into a sharp ame pisser. It was a quasi-theurge weapon. Mo Yenyu held the ame pisser and stabbed it at Zhang Xiaoyao's temple at lightning speed. Wait. A faint voice came out. The ame pisser was only an inch away from Zhang Xiaoyao's temple. Why, are you afraid? Mo Yenyu's red lips carried a mocking smile. Zhang Xiaoyao sighed and took off his black robe and hood. A white robe appeared. A handsome face like that of a celestial being looked at Mo Yenyu. His eyes were as deep as the sun and the moon in the sky. Mo Yenyu was stunned. The ame pisser in her hand fell to the ground with a clang. Zhang Xiaoyao smiled and lowered his head to pick up the ame pisser. It's a pretty hairpin. With a shake of his wrist, it turned back into the purple jade hairpin. Then, Zhang Xiaoyao personally inserted it back into Mo Yenyu's hair bun. Mo Yenyu was dumbfounded. She naturally recognized who the handsome white-robed man in front of her was. She was lucky enough to see him on the ultimate ancient road and during the border battle. However, she felt very inferior. She didn't think that with her identity and status, she could have any interaction with the son of God of the Zhang family. But now, what happened? A legendary prodigy had appeared in front of her just like that. He even helped her insert the hairpin. This made Mo Yenyu feel like she was in a dream. She was about to faint. Then, she remembered her actions and instantly broke out in a cold sweat. She hurriedly bowed to Zhang Xiaoyao. I didn't know you were the son of God. I'm sorry for offending you. Please forgive me. Mo Yenyu's voice was trembling. Why was she so sure? Apart from that vague and terrifying aura, there was nothing else. To be able to repel the 4 countries with such means. And to instantly kill the Son of Truth. Except for Zhang Xiaoyao, who could do it. Chapter 1255. Mo Yenyu's heart raced, and her back was drenched in sweat. She was puzzled, very puzzled. Wasn't it rumored that the son of God of the Zhang family was assassinated and severely injured, and was healing in the ancestral land of the Zhang family? But why would he appear here? But that image, that aura, and the strength he had shown before, he was indeed the son of God of the Zhang family. If it were anyone else, who would dare to kill the Son of Truth so easily? Zhang Xiaoyao was the only one who dared to do so. And there was one more thing. From Mo Yenyu's observation, Ling Yang should know Zhang Xiaoyao's identity. Sure enough, as the rumors said, even young Emperor Ling Yang fell in the hands of the Son of God. Mo Yenyu murmured in her heart, and looked at the handsome face in front of her. Indeed, if it were any other woman, it would be difficult to resist. Putting everything else aside, this face alone was enough to make thousands of women in the world willingly fall in his hands. It was so much so that being able to be looked at by Jun Xiaoyaro was an unparalleled honor. Why, I don't look so fierce, do I? Looking at Mo Yenyu's changing expression, Jun Xiaoyaro touched his chin with his hand. Was Mo Yenyu scared by him? Of course not, son of God is very good looking. Mo Yenyu lowered her head, not daring to look at Jun Xiaoyao's face. If Lu Fugue was here, he would be so shocked that his jaw would fall to the ground. Was this still the arrogant mare that the Mo family couldn't tame? No wonder Mo Yenyu had such an attitude. Even if she was the noble daughter of the Mo family. But in front of someone like Jun Xiaoyaro, she was still insignificant. The two were not on the same level at all. If the Jun family were to get serious, they wouldn't even need to waste too much effort to destroy the Mo family. No allies would dare to help the Mo family, because the previous two immortal battles were enough to show the Jun family's courage and strength. Haha, don't be nervous. Are you afraid that I will eat you? Jun Xiaoyaro joked. A blush appeared on Mo Yenyu's face. Previously, she was really afraid that this black-robed man would eat her. But now, Jun Xiaoyao's identity had been exposed. Mo Yenyu actually felt that it wasn't a big deal even if she was eaten. Instead, she felt honored. However, she had some self-awareness. Those who could have a relationship with Jun Xiaoyaro were all peerless heavenly maidens. For example, the goddess of the Jiang family and the young Emperor Ling Yang. She wasn't qualified. Actually, I admire you very much. Jun Xiaoyaro looked at Mo Yenyu. Mo Yenyu's heartbeat sped up, and her face blushed. She couldn't help but reveal a hint of joy. How many women could be praised by the Jun family's son of God? So, what are your considerations? Only then did Mo Yenyu remember that Jun Xiaoyaro had said that he wanted her to submit to him. If it were anyone else, Mo Yenyu wouldn't even think about it. But the person standing in front of her was the noblest and most outstanding man in the entire Jotian Shidi. Countless heavenly maidens and peerless fairies wanted to become his followers, or even his concubines. The opportunity was right in front of her. Of course, it doesn't matter if you don't agree. I won't let Lu Fugue do anything to you. After all, it would be a pity if a beautiful flower was tarnished. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his hand, brushed the dark purple hair on Mo Yenyu's forehead, and said lightly. Mo Yenyu almost stopped breathing, and her face blushed. The joy in her heart couldn't help but surge. Son of God is too gentle, Mo Yenyu murmured in her heart. Linglong's delicate body seemed to have melted into a pool of spring water. If she missed this opportunity, it was almost impossible to have a relationship with Jun Xiaoyaro again. Would she regret it for the rest of her life? Yenyu is willing. Mo Yenyu bowed her head and said respectfully to Jun Xiaoyaro. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled and then said, I heard that there are 5 candidates for the inheritance of the Mo family in this generation. Are you one of them? This was not a secret. Mo Yenyu nodded slightly and said, It is indeed as Son of God said. Since you are mine, I will naturally help you control the Mo family. Any resources, manpower, material, can come to me. Jun Xiaoyaro said. Mo Yenyu's heart skipped a beat. Although she was a little afraid in front of Jun Xiaoyaro. But she was not a fool. She understood the meaning of Jun Xiaoyao's words. Lord Son of God, could it be that you? Mo Yenyu wanted to say something but stopped, feeling a little uneasy. Jun Xiaoyaro sighed and said with a smile, Don't worry, I am not going to attack the Mo family. I just hope to find an opportunity to cooperate with the Mo family. Although Jun Xiaoyaro said this, he had already thought of a plan in his heart. At this stage, cooperation was the priority. But in the future, when his cultivation level increased, wouldn't it be easy for the Mo family to completely merge with the monarch imperial court? Jun Xiaoyaro did not want to force other forces to join from the beginning. That would not be beneficial to the monarch imperial court. Therefore, even if he was the king of assassins, Jun Xiaoyaro would still try to appease him and not force him to join. So that's how it is. Mo Yenyu was completely relieved. If they were only looking for cooperation, then the Mo family should be happy to establish a relationship with Jun Xiaoyaro. And if she could obtain Jun Xiaoyao's appreciation and support, she would have a great chance of standing out from the 5 inheritors. It was not impossible for her to become the head of the Mo family in the future. Thinking of this, Mo Yenyu looked at Jun Xiaoyaro with a hint of respect and yearning. "All right, don't reveal my identity for now," Jun Xiaoyaro said. He was in the dark, and the enemy was in the light. This was the most beneficial for him. "Yenyu understands," Mo Yenyu said respectfully. Outside, the celebration banquet of Womanland was about to be held. Ling Yang and the others were invited to join. "Damn, it's been so long and they still haven't come out. This brother is awesome, he can last so long." Lu Fugue couldn't help but sigh. Although he had 300 beautiful wives and concubines. However, he only needed 300 seconds to do it once. However, it took the two of them so long to go in. "Shut up." A cold voice sounded. Ling Yang's delicate jade face was filled with anxiety and impatience. Lu Fugue shrank his head. Qin Yuanqing pretended to be smart and said with a faint smile, "Young emperor, why are you so anxious for a dirty person? It's heartbreaking to think that the noble daughter of the Mo family fell into the hands of such a person." "You shut up too." Ling Yang's tone was even more indifferent. Qin Yuanqing's face stiffened. Was he venting his anger on him? At this moment, Jun Xiaoyaro and Mo Yenyu finally appeared. The moment they appeared, Lu Fugue was stunned. "Damn, is she King tamed?" Mo Yenyu was respectfully walking half a step behind Jun Xiaoyaro, who was wearing a black robe. She looked exactly like an obedient maid. Her eyes looked at Jun Xiaoyaro from time to time. Her eyes were full of respect and longing, and there was a touch of blush on her cheeks. It gave people a feeling that she had finished her work. "Brother, awesome." Lu Fugue gave a thumbs up. To be able to train Mo Yenyu to such an obedient state, he was truly impressed. "Miss Mo, he didn't do anything to you, right?" Qin Yuanqing looked concerned. Mo Yenyu's identity might be nothing in Jun Xiaoyao's eyes. But in Qin Yuanqing's eyes, she was not much lower than him. If he could build a relationship with this noble daughter of the Mo family, it would be good. "This is between my master and me. What does it have to do with you?" Mo Yenyu said with a cold face. Qin Yuanqing's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. "I'm King concerned about you, why are you scolding me?" Qin Yuanqing was completely speechless. Ling Yang was like this, and so was Mo Yenyu. Was he too annoying? Why were they all treating him like this? At this moment, Ling Yang's delicate and beautiful face turned to Jun Xiaoyaro and said coldly, "How does it feel to be in a tender place?" Jun Xiaoyaro was speechless. Was the jar of vinegar overturned? Chapter 1256. After that, Womanland held a grand celebration banquet. Ling Yang, Jun Xiaoyaro, and the others received the most honorable reception. The entire city was brightly lit. It was like a dreamy city that never slept. Lu Fugue and the others were drunk and very relaxed. After the banquet, the queen invited Jun Xiaoyaro alone to the secluded royal courtyard at the back to rest. Ling Yang felt a burst of jealousy in his heart when he saw this. In the secluded royal courtyard, there was a small bridge with flowing water. There were green pines and cypresses, jade grass and rare flowers. From time to time, there were harmless rare beasts jumping in the forest. Lanterns after lanterns decorated this place, adding a dreamy color. The queen and Jun Xiaoyaro came to an open-air pavilion in the courtyard. "This time, I still have to thank Mr." The queen smiled slightly. Her temperament was graceful and noble, but at this moment, she seemed to be no different from an ordinary woman. "It's nothing. Moreover, I did it for myself," Jun Xiaoyaro said. "Here's a toast to Mr." The queen personally poured the wine and invited Jun Xiaoyaro to drink with her. Jun Xiaoyaro took the wine cup, smiled faintly, and drank. "By the way, may I have the honor of seeing Mr.'s true appearance?" The queen suddenly asked curiously. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled, did not mind, and took off his cloak. The daughter of the king looked over and was immediately stunned. "The mountains are far away, but there are no beautiful women, but there are banished immortals in the human world," the queen murmured absent-mindedly. Under the moonlight of the Chaos Demon planet, a handsome young man in white held a white jade wine cup and sipped it. What a stunning scene this was. The queen seemed to want to engrave this scene deeply in her heart. Her heart throbbed for the first time. Jun Xiaoyaro sipped the wine and smiled faintly. I have revealed my true appearance to you, queen, but I don't know your real name. Hearing Jun Xiaoyao's words, the queen came back to her senses, and her face was slightly red. For as long as I can remember, everyone calls me the Daughter King. I don't have a name, the Daughter King said. Is that so? Jun Xiaoyaro looked at the wine glass in his hand. He thought to himself, as expected. How about this? If you don't mind, how about I give you a name? Jun Xiaoyaro was suddenly interested. Give a name? The daughter of the king was confused. Zhuang Shengxiao, Dream Butterfly. How about the name Zhuang Xiaomeng? Jun Xiaoyaro asked meaningfully. Zhuang Xiaomeng. The queen muttered to herself, and then looked at Jun Xiaoyaro with bright eyes. Zhuang Xiaomeng, this name is naturally very beautiful. Actually, there's an allusion to this name, Jun Xiaoyaro said as he swirled the wine in his glass. Oh! At this moment, the daughter-in-law king was like a curious baby. She blinked her phoenix eyes and looked at Jun Xiaoyaro. Once upon a time, there was a person who was sleeping and had a dream. In the dream, he turned into a butterfly, fluttering gracefully and carefree. And just when he was so happy that he almost forgot about himself, he suddenly woke up. It turned out that this was just a dream, and the butterfly was just an incarnation of himself in the dream. But that person thought about it again. Perhaps, he was really a butterfly, and now he was just a dream of the butterfly. Jun Xiaoyaro finished speaking. The daughter of the king fell into deep thought. Jun Xiaoyaro took a sip and drank the wine in his glass in one gulp. Then he said, Your Majesty, we're about to leave. The daughter of the king shook her head and said, I don't call you daughter of the king. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled. Xiaomeng. Can't you stay? The daughter of the king, no, it should be Zhuang Xiaomeng. At this moment, there was a hint of urging in her tone. Jun Xiaoyaro was silent and looked at the Mars demon star in the sky. Originally, the Mars demon star was only in the shape of a crescent moon from the Forgotten Land. But now, it was almost a full moon. If we don't leave now, I'm afraid we'll become like those walking corpses. Jun Xiaoyaro looked at the Mars demon star that was almost a full moon and said. After the primordial spirit level broke through to the eternal sand level, Jun Xiaoyaro finally understood everything. The reason for the formation of those walking corpses was not just because of the past flower. There was also this Mars demon star. He could now feel that the Mars demon star had a terrifying soul power. This soul power seemed to have absorbed the primordial spirits of countless people and was extremely vigorous. Ordinary people would definitely not be able to resist the charm of the Mars demon star. Even Jun Xiaoyaro, who had broken through to the eternal sand level primordial spirit, could not guarantee it. And Jun Xiaoyaro preliminarily judged that when the Mars demon star was full moon, that terrifying soul power would reach its peak. All the outside creatures that stayed in this forgotten land would become like those walking corpses, wandering this land forever. This was the most terrifying killing move of the Lost Land. Zhuang Xiaomeng's face was as pale as paper. Jun Xiaoyaro looked at Zhuang Xiaomeng and said with a faint smile, I know you mean well. Zhuang Xiaomeng was speechless. After a moment of silence, Zhuang Xiaomeng said faintly, leave this place and head west. Then you will enter the world of divine remains. The ancient Xianting ruins that you mentioned before should be in the world of divine remains. Thank you. Jun Xiaoyaro got up. Wait. Zhuang Xiaomeng bit her lip and hesitated. Jun Xiaoyaro looked at Zhuang Xiaomeng. Can you hug me? Zhuang Xiaomeng said faintly. Jun Xiaoyaro chuckled and gently hugged Zhuang Xiaomeng, then turned and left. Zhuangju dreams of a butterfly, or a butterfly dreaming of Zhuangju. The Forgotten Land is indeed very interesting. The next day, Jun Xiaoyaro, Ling Yang, and the others left Womanland. Zhuang Xiaomeng stood on the city wall and watched Jun Xiaoyaro and the others leave. A tear streaked across her cheek. Zhuangju dreams of a butterfly. Zhuang Xiaomeng muttered to herself. Her figure gradually became illusory. On the other side, Lu Fugue and the others looked back and suddenly exclaimed in surprise. Where is the city of Womanland? Why is it gone? Although they had been some distance away, they should have been able to see the city. Haven't you noticed? Jun Xiaoyaro said indifferently. Brother, what do you mean? Lu Fugue was still confused. Mo Yenyu was also confused. Only Ling Yang seemed to have suddenly thought of something, and a touch of astonishment flashed across her beautiful eyes. Everything is just a dream, an illusion, Jun Xiaoyaro said. What? Lu Fugue screamed in disbelief. How is that possible? You mean what we experienced is all an illusion? Qin Yuanqing also didn't want to believe it. They were all outstanding people. If it was just a rough illusion or an illusion array, they should be able to see through it. Jun Xiaoyao directly told them some things. What? The 9 worlds are all illusions of some kind of dream. The real killer move of the Forgotten Land is the Chaos Demon Star, and those walking corpses before are also related to it. Hearing Jun Xiaoyao's explanation, all the geniuses present felt that it was unbelievable. It was really too amazing. It was as if they had taken a trip to the dream realm. Otherwise, how could the Forgotten Kingdom become one of the 7 incredible worlds? Jun Xiaoyaro said indifferently. What he experienced when he entered Womanland was that indescribable strangeness. In fact, it originated from this. However, at that time, his primordial spirit had not reached the eternal sand level, so he couldn't be sure. Of course, the opportunities of the 3 great secret realms are all real. This is also the biggest opportunity of the lost land in the periphery of the Forgotten Kingdom. That's not right. If it's the sole power of the dream realm, how could we be injured by those people from those countries? Lu Fugue was confused. Previously, Qin Yuanqing was injured by the demon crown prince of the demon world. Although they are illusions in the dream, they are created by extremely terrifying soul power. If you want to know the real reason, you have to completely unravel the secret of the Forgotten Kingdom. Only then can you know it, Jun Xiaoyaro said. This was also why Jun Xiaoyaro said that the Forgotten Kingdom was very interesting. Because maybe his guess when he entered before was true. The Forgotten Kingdom was really alive. Chapter 1257. Jun Xiaoyao's words undoubtedly shook the hearts of all the Sky Prides present. When the truth was revealed, everyone felt incredulous. The 9 realms of the Forgotten Land were all illusions. However, it was not quite accurate to say that they were illusions because they were no different from reality. Truth and falsehood, falsehood and truth. Perhaps this was the most incredible thing about the Forgotten Nation. They recalled what the big shots of the Immortal Court had said when they entered the Immortal Court. In the Forgotten Nation, truth and falsehood were intertwined. No one could distinguish between truth and falsehood, and it contained unpredictable dangers. Now, it seemed that this was indeed the case. If it weren't for your reminder, brother, we might still be in the dark, Lu Fugue said with lingering fear. He did not want to become a walking corpse. As for Ling Yang, her expression was even more unnatural. Her cheeks were quietly flushed. In that case, was she jealous of the heir? After all, the daughter king was also an illusion and not a real person. At the thought of this, Ling Yang felt a little embarrassed. Fortunately, Jun Xiaoyao did not notice this. Next, after everyone rested for a while, they began to go deeper into the world of divine remains. If they guessed correctly, that should be the location of the ancient Xianting ruins. After Jun Xiaoyao's reminder this time, the Sky Prides present had a trace of respect for him. It was to the extent that even Ling Yuan's prestige had weakened a little with him as their leader. But she did not care. In fact, the more Jun Xiaoyao showed his wisdom and means, the more she felt that her judgment was not bad. As for Qin Yuanqing, he was completely honest. He was not the kind of person who was extremely stupid. Until now, he had vaguely guessed something, but he did not dare to believe it. About half a month had passed since then. Ling Yang, Jun Xiaoyao, and the others finally arrived at the edge of the world of divine remains. Looking around, everyone sucked in a deep breath. That was because the world of divine remains was not on the ground, but suspended in the void. Moreover, it was not an entire continent. Instead, it was a series of floating islands. These islands were scattered all over the void. At a glance, there were tens of thousands of them. Many of the islands had many ancient buildings. There were also all kinds of precious medicines, spirit plants, and so on that were emitting fragrances. Jun Xiaoyaro hadn't thought of the system prompt yet. Obviously, this wasn't the deepest part of the Forgotten Kingdom, so he couldn't sign in yet. Could this be another illusion? Once bitten by a snake, twice shy. Even Lu Fugue was muttering to himself. I don't think so, Jun Xiaoyaro said. Although in the Forgotten Kingdom, it was hard to distinguish between the real and the fake. However, after his primordial spirit broke through to the eternal sand level, he still had the ability to distinguish. I think we should split up, Jun Xiaoyaro said all of a sudden. When the crowd heard this, they were stunned for a moment before nodding their heads. That was indeed the case. The ruins of the ancient Xian Ting covered a vast area. And not only the ancient Xian Ting, but also the 9 Xian Ting immortal legacies of the later generations. If they still traveled together, they would undoubtedly miss out on many opportunities. And even if they found the opportunities, how would they split them? Some of the accompanying prodigies, such as Qin Yuanqing, Lu Fugue, and the others, naturally wanted a piece of the pie. They didn't want all the opportunities to be taken by the prodigies of the Xian Ting. Mo Yenyu didn't say a word, but she stood behind Jun Xiaoyaro. Obviously, she was determined to follow Jun Xiaoyaro. Brother, let's team up. Lu Fugue blinked his small bean-like eyes. If he followed a big shot, he could always get some soup and water. Mo Yenyu secretly glared at Lu Fugue, but didn't say anything. Although she still hated Lu Fugue. But with Jun Xiaoyaro mediating, she and Lu Fugue didn't interfere with each other for the time being. Sure, Jun Xiaoyaro said lightly. He originally planned to take in Lu Fugue and Mo Yenyu. They would be the breakthrough point between the Lu family and the Mo family. Qin Yuanqing breathed a sigh of relief. He could finally leave this black-robed man. Ling Yang bit her lip. Although she also wanted to be with Jun Xiaoyaro. But after all, she was the young empress of the Xian Ting, and she also shouldered the mission of Empress Wa's immortal lineage. Most importantly, she had to figure out why she had 2 souls in one body. Therefore, she still had many things to do, and couldn't follow Jun Xiaoyaro. Then, everyone began to disperse. Ling Yang was with a group of prodigies of Empress Wa's immortal lineage. Qin Yuanqing was with a few other accompanying prodigies. Jun Xiaoyaro was with Lu Fugue and Mo Yenyu. Before dispersing, Ling Yang glanced at Jun Xiaoyaro and silently sent a voice transmission. Be careful. Jun Xiaoyaro also sent a voice transmission. Don't force yourself, I'm here. After saying that, Jun Xiaoyaro and the other 2 rushed toward those floating islands. Looking at Jun Xiaoyao's back, Ling Yang was silent. Jun Xiaoyaro always gave people a sense of security. It was as if with him, they wouldn't be afraid even if the sky collapsed. Ling Yang's group wasn't the only ones who entered the world of divine offering. The other immortal lineages also began to enter the world of divine offering. Of course, there was also a group of prodigies who would forever stay in the Forgotten Land. But that was normal. After all, before entering, they had already been warned that it was dangerous. They couldn't blame others if they died. Jun Xiaoyaro led Lu Fugue and Mo Yenyu through one floating island after another. During this period, they also found some small opportunities, elixirs of immortality, rare treasures, and so on. Jun Xiaoyaro wasn't too interested in these, so he left them to Lu Fugue and Mo Yenyu. In order to gain loyalty, one had to give something in return. Jun Xiaoyaro understood this simple principle. Moreover, these treasures were indeed nothing in the eyes of the current Jun Xiaoyaro. Mo Yenyu was elated, and her fair and charming face was full of joy. Even if she was one of the 5 successors of the Mo family, it was impossible for her to easily obtain the elixirs of immortality, immortal gold, and other supreme treasures. Now, she had only been by Jun Xiaoyao's side for a short while, and she had already obtained so many benefits. This made Mo Yenyu even more determined to follow Jun Xiaoyaro. Lu Fugue was also very happy. Don't be fooled by his carefree appearance. In fact, he was also scheming. He also vaguely had a guess, but he wasn't sure yet. Even so, Lu Fugue's respect for Jun Xiaoyaro grew imperceptibly. After all, if it was really as he thought. Then his identity as the young master of the Lu family was really nothing. So what if he was the son of the Heavenly Works Emperor? And just as the three of them went deep into the world of divine offering, suddenly, Jun Xiaoyao stopped in his tracks. Looks like there's something good up ahead. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes lit up slightly. If he called it something good, then it was definitely something good. What is it? Lu Fugue and Mo Yenyu were both dumbfounded. Of course, they didn't know that Jun Xiaoyao had one of the 9 great heavenly books. Therefore, he could vaguely detect some clues about the treasures. Over there. Jun Xiaoyao took a step forward and led the two into the depths of the world of divine offering. Not long after, the sound of quarreling and fighting came from up ahead. That's the Kaiyu celestial system? Jun Xiaoyao looked over and saw familiar faces. They were the Kaiyu celestial system's prodigies, Kai Long, Kai Yu, and the others he had met at Jiu Tiez's marriage ceremony on the ultimate ancient road. But now, they seemed to be in a bad situation. Chapter 1258. Kaiyu Immortal's lineage was in an awkward position among the 9 great Xian Ting. Because they were not orthodox. They used to be the overlord of the demonic path in the 9 heavens immortal realm, Jolie Demonic Kingdom. They were ruled by the legendary emperor of the demonic path, Demon Emperor Kaiyu. However, they later reached an agreement with the Xian Ting and joined the Xian Ting, becoming the 9th great immortal lineage. However, even after joining the Xian Ting, Kaiyu Immortal's lineage still had a low status. Kaiyu Immortal's lineage's army was always at the forefront of any conflict. However, they did not get many benefits. It was the same this time. The other 8 great immortal lineages were allowed to bring some followers in. However, Kaiyu Immortal's lineage was not allowed to do so. As a matter of fact, it was already good enough that they could come in by themselves. There was even a rumor in the Xian Ting that the prodigies of Kaiyu Immortal's lineage were not allowed to enter the Forgotten Kingdom. Meanwhile, a group of prodigies from Kaiyu Immortal's lineage landed on a vast floating island. There were many huge blood-red palaces on the island. It was obvious that this was a treasure left behind by Kaiyu Immortal's lineage. There were treasures left behind by the ancient Xian Ting in this place. There were also inheritances left behind by the ancestors of the 9 great immortal lineages. At this moment, a man and a woman were leading this group of prodigies. The woman wore a black soft armor that contrasted with her snow-white skin. She was tall and had a cold face. She was Kai Long. The most outstanding prodigy of Kaiyu Immortal's lineage, Kai Lai, was killed by Jun Xiaoyao long ago. Therefore, Kai Long was now the big sister of Kaiyu Immortal's lineage. Beside her was Kai Yu. At this moment, their gazes were coldly looking at the other side. Several factions were confronting them. Kang Ju of Kang Jie Immortal's lineage stood alone. Although there was only one person, he gave off a faint sense of oppression. Because he was a seed of Kang Jie Immortal's lineage, he had extraordinary means. On the other side were the prodigies of Gonggong Immortal's lineage. Their leader was a seeded figure, Ming Ya. He was also a young prodigy with powerful techniques. In the middle, there was another faction that made Kai Long and the others look serious. They were none other than Purple Flame Heaven Monarch, Red Hair Ghost, and the others. They were all prodigies of the 18 steeds of Yangyun and represented Di Haotian's will. Everyone, what is the meaning of this? Kai Long said coldly. Though her capabilities were not weak, it was impossible for her to intimidate this group of heaven's favorites. We are rather interested in this inheritance. The red-haired ghost grinned, his eyes filled with aggressive wildness. This is the inheritance of our Kaiyu Immortal system, Kaiyu shouted. Kaiyu celestial lineage had a low status in Xian Ting. This fortune might be the chance for Kaiyu system to rise once more. No, the fortune in this place belongs to those who are destined to get it. I don't mind if you go and search for the fortune of Gonggong Immortal Legacy. Ming Ya of Gonggong Immortal System said flatly. He was dressed in a blue robe, and the law of runes beneath his feet surged like waves. When entering the Forgotten Nations, there was no rule that each immortal orthodoxy could only obtain the opportunities of their own immortal orthodoxy, right? Kang Ju also stared at the Kaiyu Immortal System's inheritance. He could faintly sense a wave of aura coming from it. At the very least, it should be an emperor weapon. Have you ever taken our Kaiyu immortal system seriously? Kai Long's twin peaks trembled. Chiyo's lineage had always been at the front lines in the past battles of the Immortal Court. Because of this, Kaiyu system suffered the heaviest losses. As a result, Kaiyu immortal system had lost its competitive edge among the 9 immortal orthodoxies. Despite all their efforts, the other 8 immortal orthodoxies still looked down on them, seeing them as inferior. Purple Flame Lord stepped forward and said flatly, "You should know that your predecessors were the Jolie demonic kingdom, one of the origins of the demonic path. They had committed crimes in the immortal realm. It was the Xian Ting that forgave you and was even willing to accept you. You should have been sinners, but now you can go down in history with the Xian Ting. This is your fortune. So, don't be greedy." Purple Flame Lord's words made Kai Long, Kai Yu, and the other prodigies' teeth chatter. What did he mean by forgiving them? Back then, Kaiyu demonic emperor dominated the Jolie demonic kingdom. Xian Ting didn't want to pay a huge price, so they made peace with Jolie demonic kingdom. Both sides were supposed to be equal. But now, Purple Flame Lord made it sound like Jolie demonic kingdom was begging for peace. Kaiyu immortal system's prodigies were indifferent. Purple Flame Lord changed the topic. However, this may not be your only fate. What do you mean? Kai Long asked coldly. You should know that young King Fuxi is destined to become the ruler of Xian Ting. If you are willing to side with Fuxi immortal system, perhaps in the future, your status will rise. So, Kai Long sneered. Contribute the opportunities here to prove your loyalty, Purple Flame Heavenly Monarch said. Kang Ju didn't say anything. Daya's expression changed slightly. The 9 great immortal systems of Xian Ting had their own internal structure. Cangjie immortal system was on Fuxi immortal system's side. But Gonggong immortal system didn't choose a side. If Kaiyu immortal system really gave the treasure to Purple Flame Lord, wouldn't it be a waste of his effort? Impossible. Kaiyu shouted coldly. Kaiyu immortal system and Fuxi immortal system didn't have a good relationship. During Jiyu Tie's marriage ceremony, Fuxi immortal system's prodigies humiliated them. If it wasn't for Jun Xiaoyaro pretending to be Kai Lai, they wouldn't have had a good time. Later on, some Kaiyu immortal system's prodigies were thinking. If they had a heaven-defying genius like Jun Xiaoyaro in their immortal system, then they wouldn't be bullied to this extent. Sigh, refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Purple Flame Lord sighed. Seeing that we're all from Xian Ting, I won't kill you. Kang Ju also stepped out. Although he didn't kill them, they would still suffer if they tried to stop him. Let's have a fair competition. Daya and the other prodigies of Gonggong immortal system also made their move. Instantly, all sorts of techniques and laws formed a torrent that blasted towards Kaiyu immortal system's prodigies. There's only one treasure here. How are you going to split it? Kai Long shouted. It's none of your business. The 3 factions had reached an agreement. They would first get rid of the hindrances, then fight for the treasures with their own abilities. Fart. A series of blood-coughing sounds could be heard. Many Chiyo's prodigies were sent flying like broken kites, coughing out blood as they suffered heavy injuries. Even Kai Long, who was the strongest among them, coughed up blood as her body trembled. Just as the prodigies of the 3 factions were about to enter the treasure grounds, a faint voice could be heard. So this is the unified immortal system advertised to the outside world. How ironic. The sudden words caused all the Sky Prides present to turn their gazes in that direction. Who's there? 3 figures appeared in the void. A black-robed man, a fatty, and a purple-robed woman. They were Jun Xiaoyao's trio. It's you. When they saw Jun Xiaoyao, Purple Flame Lord and the rest had a cold glint in their eyes. Chapter 1259. Back when they were fighting for the opportunity at the Flying Deity Waterfall in the Forgotten Land, they had been tricked by Jun Xiaoyao. How dare you appear in front of us again? Ming Ya of the Gonggong celestial lineage looked unfriendly. He stared at Jun Xiaoyao warily. He was guarding against Jun Xiaoyao using that trick again. The purple flame heavenly lord sneered and said, "You're relying on that trick to confuse the divine soul? Unfortunately, we're already on our guard." They had been tricked because they didn't guard against the flower of the past at all. If they knew in advance, they wouldn't have been tricked so easily. "Mo Yenyu, why are you with him?" Kang Ju looked at Mo Yenyu, who was next to Jun Xiaoyaro, with confusion. Kang Ju, Mo Yenyu, and the Child of Truth were in the same team during the battle at the Flying Deity Waterfall. The Child of Truth had been killed by Jun Xiaoyaro. Mo Yenyu was captured alive. At that time, Kang Ju thought that Mo Yenyu might also be dead. He didn't expect to see her again, and she had become one of his people. "This has nothing to do with you. However, since you brought me here, I'll give you a piece of advice. Don't fight with my master. You can't win," Mo Yenyu said lightly. Jun Xiaoyaro didn't take the initiative to reveal his identity. She naturally wouldn't reveal it. But one could imagine that among the prodigies who entered the Forgotten Nations, except for Di Haotian and a few others who could exchange blows with Jun Xiaoyaro, the other prodigies were nothing in front of Jun Xiaoyaro. Mo Yenyu's action was indeed a reminder to Kang Ju. However, Kang Ju didn't feel grateful after hearing that. Instead, his face turned cold. After all, no man would be willing to be told that he was inferior to another man by another woman. Most importantly, the person Mo Yenyu had addressed was her master. She was a famous noble daughter of the Mo family and had a cold temperament, but now she was willing to call this black-robed man master. This made Kang Ju a little confused and suspicious of the black-robed man's identity. As for the prodigies of the Kaiyu celestial lineage, they were also confused. Who was this black-robed man? He actually dared to provoke three forces at the same time. If you're relying on Ling Yang, then I can only say that you're overthinking it. The Purple Flame Lord of Heaven chuckled. Jun Xiaoyaro said very calmly, "If you don't scram, then die. The one who's going to die is you." The Purple Flame Lord of Heaven was a frivolous person. He did not care about anyone. As he raised his hand, the divine flames surged and transformed into a fire dragon that charged toward Jun Xiaoyao. The Purple Flame Lord of Heaven was a living being born from a purple sun. He was born with the ability to control fire. He was one of the most outstanding dark horses of Di Haotian's era. At this moment, as he unleashed his moves, the temperature of the world rose sharply. Kang Ju, Daya, and the other geniuses were startled upon seeing this. No wonder he is ranked third among the 18 horsemen of Yangyun. Kang Ju thought to himself. The top few among the 18 horsemen of Yangyun are already comparable to the seedlings of the immortal heritage. How strong is Di Haotian? Daya did not look too happy either. The Gonggong immortal lineage did not want to submit to any immortal lineage. Facing the Purple Flame Lord of Heaven, Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were cold. He had already investigated and found out that the Purple Flame Lord of Heaven was the one who had contacted the Forbidden Clan and set up the assassination. Although he was ordered by Di Haotian, his sins were unforgivable. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his hand and pushed forward. The power of laws surged. Jun Xiaoyaro had comprehended 12 laws back at the Flying Deity Waterfall, adding to the 18 he had comprehended before. At present, Jun Xiaoyaro had mastered a total of 30 laws. This was unimaginable for a 7th stage supreme. Now, he didn't need to use too many moves against ordinary people. It was like a battle between some of the most powerful people. Moves were already a burden. Every move of his showed the true meaning of the Great Tao. While the current Jun Xiaoyaro had yet to reach that level, he was already beginning to take on that demeanor. Rumble. The fire dragon was extinguished by Jun Xiaoyao's palm. At the same time, it continued to press down on the Purple Flame Lord of Heaven. The Purple Flame Lord of Heaven's expression changed. He felt like the legendary immemorial stone monkey that was suppressed by the Five Fingers Mountain. He felt powerless. He had only experienced this feeling in the battle with Di Haotian. But even then, Di Haotian did not give him such a sense of despair. "Who are you?" The Purple Flame Lord of Heaven shouted. Jun Xiaoyaro did not say a word. He was too lazy to speak. World-burning fire. The Purple Flame Lord of Heaven did not hesitate to use his ultimate move. Thousands of fire seeds surged out of his body. Those were the thousands of fire seeds that he had refined. Each of them was a rare fire seed that could burn the sky. When the thousands of fire gathered, it was enough to burn a world. Even the void was burned down. If any powerhouse was trapped in the myriad flames, they would absolutely be burned until not even ashes remained. In the face of the purple flame lord of heaven's powerful move, Jun Xiaoyaro was still calm. He reached out his hand and the power of 30 laws intertwined to form a palm that extinguished the thousands of fire seeds. Then, he grabbed the purple flame lord of heaven. This scene caused the surrounding people to tremble endlessly. This was too visually stunning. He was once a dark horse who was strong enough to challenge Di Haotian. But now, he was easily squashed like an ant in the palm of a hand. How is this possible? Did an expert of the older generation sneak in? Even the red-haired ghost and the others were stunned. Even Di Haotian would need some time to suppress the purple flame lord of heaven. Kill. The red-haired ghost attacked to save the purple flame lord of heaven. The other members of the 18 horsemen of Yangyun also attacked. Yu Hui and Yu Mo, who were ranked first and second, were not there. Bai Luoxue, who was ranked fourth, was not there either. However, the other elites of the 18 horsemen of Yangyun, such as Tian Zhenzi and Man Wang, who were ranked seventh, were there. They all had their own areas of expertise. Tian Zhenzi raised his hand and formed a terrifying killing array. Sword light shot out in all directions. The barbarian king looked up to the sky and roared. His body actually expanded to a size of 30 meters, and his aura could devour mountains and rivers. These were the most outstanding talents of their generation who had been subdued by Di Haotian. But now, Jun Xiaoyaro was just an ordinary person facing these talents. He slapped down with his other hand. It was as if the heavens were collapsing and the Tao was being overturned. A terrifying blood qi burst out along with the vast power of the Tao laws. Tian Zhenzi, Man Wang, and the other elites of the 18 horsemen of Yangyun were smashed into pieces. The pupils of Kang Ju, Daya, and the rest suddenly shrunk when they saw this scene. This power was too terrifying. Who else could stop it except for Di Haotian? Even the seed-level elites were weak in front of it. Who are you? The purple flame lord of heaven struggled as flames that could burn the sky kept coming out of his body. However, he could not break free from the hand of laws. An ant doesn't deserve to know your name. Jun Xiaoyaro tightened his grip. Crack. The purple flame heavenly lord was crushed into dust by the hand of law. Chapter 1260. You actually dared to provoke Di Haotian and kill his subordinates. They saw how easily Jun Xiaoyaro killed the purple flame lord of the heavens and the others. Ming Wei couldn't help but say, Di Haotian, what is he? Jun Xiaoyaro said lightly. He was just a leak that controlled the memory of reincarnation. Even if he had some tricks up his sleeve, in Jun Xiaoyao's eyes, it was still very superficial and a little laughable. People like him thought that they could reap others. But he didn't know that he was just a life to be reaped. If not for Jun Xiaoyao, Di Haotian might have been able to live a smooth life. But unfortunately, since he was born, why was he born? No one can protect you, not even Ling Yang. Kang Ju said coldly. His Tsungjie immortal system was on the side of Fuxi immortal system. So he naturally stood on Di Haotian's side. You seem to be on Di Haotian's side. Jun Xiaoyaro glanced at Kang Ju indifferently. Since he was on Di Haotian's side, that was not only his enemy, but also Ling Yang's enemy. Because Ling Yang and Di Haotian, these two young kings, were destined to be unable to coexist. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his palm and suppress. Kang Ju's expression suddenly changed and he opened his mouth to spit out a word. You. As soon as this word came out, there really was a word you appearing on the screen. This you word was as if it was made of gold and iron, shining with a silver light, appearing extremely stable and heavy. This you word rapidly enlarged in midair, and finally turned into a silver metal wall, flowing with endless power of laws. Interesting. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes revealed a look of interest. Tsungjie immortal system was rumored to have originated from a progenitor who created words. This lineage was extremely special, cultivating all kinds of words, and each word contained substantial power. Of course, this wasn't exclusive to Tsungjie. For example, the Western Paradise sect also cultivated the six-syllable Sanskrit mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum. Among the cultivators, there was also the 9 words mantra of Taoism. It was just that Kangjie's immortal lineage turned the cultivation of these characters into the core orthodox. The wall formed by the word Yu actually blocked Jun Xiaoyao's attack. However, this was also Jun Xiaoyao's casual move. That was because he was extremely interested in this cultivation method. Therefore, he didn't mind exchanging a few moves with Kangju. Kill. Kangju spat out another word. Immediately, blood rained down from the sky. A bloody kill word appeared on the screen. Jun Xiaoyao even felt a stinging sensation on his skin, as if he was being pricked by needles. It was as if the word kill had conveyed the true essence of the Tao of killing. With the King of Assassins' Tao of killing, he might be able to transform and condense the word kill, Jun Xiaoyao thought to himself. He was trying to master it. After all, he had the heaven-defying aptitude of the King of Anomalies. In addition, he also cultivated the War God Catalogue. With just a glance, he could comprehend a lot of the various moves and abilities. Damn it, you want to comprehend my Tsungjie lineage's Tao? Kangju's expression was extremely cold. He was a seed-level prodigy of Tsungjie. When others fought against him, they were all very careful. However, this black-robed man only wanted to comprehend his Tao and didn't take him seriously. This was undoubtedly a humiliation. You guessed right, too bad there's no reward. Jun Xiaoyao chuckled. Kangju opened his mouth again and shouted, "Kill." A bloody kill word appeared again. When the 2 words appeared and combined, a monstrous killing aura was produced. The entire world seemed to have turned into a bloody color. When the 2 words were combined, they actually burst out with an even more terrifying power. However, this was nothing to Jun Xiaoyao. His current strength was no longer something that these Xian Ting seed-level prodigies could contend against. Jun Xiaoyao raised his hand and imprisoned the 2 bloody words with the hand of law. Then, he activated the War God Catalogue and dissected the various mysteries within. His eternal sand realm primordial spirit was also comprehending the Tao within. This didn't mean that Jun Xiaoyao wanted to walk the path of the Tsungjie immortal unified lineage. To him, all kinds of Tao and Tao were worth studying. This would also help him to truly comprehend his own Tao in the future. Seeing this scene, Kangju suddenly felt powerless in his heart. This black-robed man gave him the feeling that he was a figure of the older generation. His strength was not on the same level as his. It's about time. Jun Xiaoyao raised his hand and grabbed, and the word kill was directly destroyed. Then, he used his finger as a sword and slashed at Kangju. Kangju opened his mouth and spat out the word defend. However, he couldn't block Jun Xiaoyao's sword finger. Poochie. Kangju's forehead was pierced, and his primordial spirit was completely annihilated. This scene sent chills down Daya's spine. He felt the black-robed man's gaze turn towards him. Daya hurriedly said, "I'm not on Di Haotian's side. I'll leave now." That black-robed man dared to kill Di Haotian's people and the prodigies of the immortal lineages without restraint. Either he was a lunatic, or he was really confident. But no matter which, the result was the same for Daya. He was not to be trifled with. As Daya spoke, he quickly led the Gonggong immortal lineage's people away. Jun Xiaoyao didn't attack again. If he really slaughtered all the seed-level prodigies of the 9 immortal lineages, that would really cause a huge problem. And more importantly, it would make things difficult for Ling Yang. After all, she was the one who brought him in. Jun Xiaoyao also promised before that he wouldn't go overboard with his massacre. After the Gonggong immortal lineage's people left, apart from Jun Xiaoyao's trio, only the Kaiyu immortal lineage's prodigies were left. Their hearts were a little uneasy. Jun Xiaoyao's strength was too terrifying. He easily killed Purple Flame Lord of Heaven, Kangju, and the others. Thank you for your help, Senior. Kai Long walked up with a nervous heart. To be honest, they didn't know whether this black-robed man was a friend or foe. Although he helped them out of their predicament, he didn't look like a saint. I'm not here to do good deeds. Jun Xiaoyaro said flatly. Back then, he pretended to be Kai Lai and made Kai Long and the others happy for nothing. And now, he was standing in front of the Kaiyu immortal lineage's prodigies with another identity. However, Jun Xiaoyaro already had some ideas and plans in mind. He saw it during Gu Tiez's marriage banquet. The Kaiyu immortal lineage didn't seem to be favored by the Xianting. At that time, he thought it was a good way to break through the Xianting. Kai Long's heart sank after hearing Jun Xiaoyao's words. Of course, I won't do anything to you. Treasures belong to those who are fated to get them. If they're not mine, I won't force them. Jun Xiaoyaro said flatly. Then, he walked directly to the blood-colored palace. That was the place of inheritance of the Kaiyu immortal lineage. Lu Fugue and Mo Yenyu followed closely behind. Kai Long, Kai Yu, and the other prodigies of the Kaiyu immortal lineage gritted their teeth and followed behind. Sister Kai Long, don't worry. Most of the inheritances of the Kaiyu immortal lineage have restrictions. It won't be easy for outsiders to get them. They might even suffer a backlash. Kaiyu transmitted his voice secretly. The Kaiyu immortal lineage used to be the Jiuli demonic kingdom. It was one of the origins of the demonic Tao. How could an outsider get their inheritance so easily? If they forced it, they might even suffer a terrifying backlash. But Kai Long's expression didn't relax at all. She felt that the black-robed man was like a god who had everything under his control. She couldn't help but think of another white-clothed man who had similarly subdued everything. Chapter 1261. This floating island was incomparably huge, almost like a small continent. There were many blood-colored palaces in it. They were grand and majestic, flowing with a wild and majestic aura. This was an inheritance ground of the Kaiyu celestial lineage. There were many opportunities that could only be found by the prodigies of the Kaiyu celestial lineage. But Jun Xiaoyaro didn't care. He scanned with the divine will of the eternal sand-level primordial spirit, and everything around him was exposed without any secrets. Even all kinds of aura-concealing formations couldn't block the senses of Jun Xiaoyao's divine will. Jun Xiaoyaro could easily find all kinds of treasures, ancient artifacts, and materials. However, he didn't care about these things. Mo Yenyu and Lu Fugue, who were following behind, were overjoyed. As for Kai Long and the others, although they didn't look too good, they didn't dare to say anything and could only follow behind silently. Blood jade essence, 10,000-year-old silver mother, Tao origin wood, what a fortune. Lu Fugue was so happy that the fat on his face was shaking. Mo Yenyu was also happy. Even with her status in the Mo clan, she couldn't get too many of these treasures. However, Jun Xiaoyaro didn't care about them at all. Soon, Jun Xiaoyaro came to a blood-colored palace in the deepest part of this area. That palace was actually also floating in the air. It was chained to the ground and connected to the ground. The fluctuation that Jun Xiaoyaro faintly sensed before came from here. This was also the place where he said there were good things. Jun Xiaoyaro was about to enter when Kai Long's voice came from behind. Senior, wait, Jun Xiaoyaro looked back. Lu Fugue raised his eyebrows and glanced at Kai Long. His sexy figure was not much inferior to Mo Yenyu's. What, you want to stop us? Lu Fugue grinned. Of course not, but this place is a little dangerous. If you don't have the bloodline of the Kaiyu celestial lineage, you might be in danger, Kai Long said. At the back, Kai Yu and the others didn't look too good. In truth, all of them were thinking that it was none of their business if Jun Xiaoyaro were to be killed by the dangerous means involved. On the contrary, he could even reap the benefits in the end. Yet now, Kai Long had actually made it clear. Isn't this exactly what you want? Jun Xiaoyaro glanced at Kai Long. Logically speaking, that is indeed the case. However, Senior has helped us after all. Kai Long exhaled deeply and said with a serious expression. It's fine. Jun Xiaoyaro turned around and entered with his hands behind his back. Sister Kai Long, since he doesn't care, then forget it. Kai Yu said softly. Pushing open the door, he was greeted by the smell of dust. The inside of the blood-colored palace was extremely vast. As far as the eye could see, it was spacious and empty. There was even a palace behind it. Array formation? Jun Xiaoyaro scanned the area with his divine sense and detected the obscure energy fluctuations underground. He didn't mind and directly stepped forward. Instantly, murderous light flashed in all directions, and a thick blood-red sword chi swept out. If ordinary heavenly venerables were caught off guard, they would be severely injured or even die. However, these blood-red sword chi disappeared when it fell on Jun Xiaoyaro. This was naturally the effect of magical power immunity. This ability could grow with Jun Xiaoyaro. The stronger he was, the stronger his magical power immunity would be. How could this be? Kai Yu and the other prodigies were completely stunned. This strength was simply not something that the younger generation should have. They were more and more certain that this should be a figure of the older generation. It was just that after hiding his identity, he was quietly brought in by Ling Yang. Then, Jun Xiaoyaro continued to enter the next palace. And when they saw this palace, everyone present held their breaths. What did they see? Rows and rows of terracotta soldiers were inside. Counting carefully, there were a total of 5,000. These 5,000 terracotta soldiers were all wearing heavy black and gold plate armor with dark golden runes imprinted on the surface. They all held giant spears or long halberds in their hands, and their lethality was explosive. They were riding on a dragon horse with a trace of dragon blood. They looked like 5,000 steel statues, with a terrifying aura that made the air heavy. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were deep. What surprised him was the aura of these 5,000 terracotta soldiers. They were all supreme being powerhouses, although Jun Xiaoyao's current strength had far surpassed that of a supreme being. It did not mean that supreme beings were cabbages on the street. In some large forces, supreme beings were still existences like ancestors who had become saints. But now, the 5,000 terracotta soldiers in front of him were all filled with the aura of a supreme being. This was a little surprising. An army formed by supreme beings, how big of a deal was this? Even the Jun family had not appeared before. Of course, it was also possible that the Jun family had not brought out such a trump card, but it did not mean that it did not exist. But now, this army formed by 5,000 supreme beings appeared in front of Jun Xiaoyaro. Just when Jun Xiaoyaro was slightly surprised. Behind him, Kai Long and the other geniuses of the Kaiyu celestial lineage could not help but cry out. This is the barbarian cavalry of the Jolie Devil Kingdom. Kai Long cried out involuntarily. She covered her mouth with her jade-like hand, extremely shocked. Actually, they did not know much. They only knew that the predecessor of the Kaiyu celestial lineage, the Jolie Devil Kingdom, once had an invincible army called the barbarian cavalry. There weren't many people in this group of cavalry. Even at its peak, it did not exceed 10,000, but its combat strength was extremely terrifying. At that time, even the Xian Ting had paid a price to fight against this cavalry. A large number of heavenly soldiers and generals had fallen. Kai Long and the others did not expect to see this invincible army of supreme beings here again. Barbarian cavalry, Jun Xiaoyao's eyes lit up slightly. If this army could be used by him and included in the Emperor Imperial Court, that would be a considerable increase in the combat strength of the Emperor Imperial Court. After all, this was an army formed by supreme beings. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes flashed, and the perception of the eternal sand-level primordial spirit covered the area. Soon, he sensed a trace of the situation. No, these barbarian cavalry don't seem to be living creatures. They are more like half-human, half-puppet existences. Jun Xiaoyaro muttered. At this moment, Kai Long said, "Senior is indeed wise. This barbarian cavalry is indeed the army of the Jolie Devil Kingdom, the predecessor of the Kaiyu celestial lineage. They were originally humans, but they were refined into half-human and half-puppet existences using a special technique. That's why they can exist in this world. Their cultivation was forcefully raised to the supreme being level, but their potential was exhausted, and they could only stop there for the rest of their lives." Kai Long's words solved Jun Xiaoyao's doubts. He knew it. Supreme beings were not cabbages. How could they easily form an army? Being refined into a half-puppet meant losing the potential to advance. This was the price they had to pay. And Jun Xiaoyaro was certain. If it was a one-on-one battle, the supreme beings of the barbarian cavalry would definitely not be able to defeat a true supreme being. But to be honest, there were pros and cons. Although the price to pay was huge, such a supreme being army did not rely on quality, but on quantity. 3 to 5 might be meaningless. But if there were tens of thousands of them, then it would be terrifying. They would be invincible and no one would be able to stop them. Let me give it a try. Jun Xiaoyaro was curious as he stepped into the array of puppets. Instantly, killing intent surged. Chapter 1262. The barbarian cavalry that had been silent for thousands of years began to tremble. The dust on the black gold plate armor on their bodies rustled and fell. It was as if a machine that had been silent for a long time had begun to move. One by one, the barbarian cavalry and the dragon horses under them all opened their eyes. Their eyes were incomparably numb and dead. But there was a hint of inspiration. Obviously, these were half-human, half-puppet existences. Although they were like puppets, they retained a trace of human thinking and fighting instincts. This was the most powerful aspect of the barbarian cavalry. They had the immortal body of a puppet and powerful strength. They also had a trace of human inspiration and fighting instincts. This kind of existence was far more powerful than those ordinary puppets. Rumble. The barbarian cavalry had all awakened. Holding a golden spear in their hands, the aura of each supreme being soared into the sky. The current supreme being was almost the same as an ant to Jun Xiaoyaro. But when the aura of 5,000 supreme being overlapped and erupted, it actually made Jun Xiaoyaro look sideways. A bit interesting. Jun Xiaoyaro revealed a trace of surprise. He could see it. This barbarian cavalry seemed to be arranged in a special array. The power of 5,000 supreme beings seemed to be twisted into a rope. The combined power was not as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. Instead, it was multiplied. Boom. The 5,000 barbarian cavalry took a step forward in unison, and the entire blood-colored palace trembled. If it wasn't for the special array suppression of this palace, it would have been shattered into pieces. Oh my god, that aura is so terrifying. Lu Fugue and Mo Yenyu couldn't help but take 2 steps back. That terrifying aura, even a heavenly venerable would have to suffer. Is this the power of the barbarian cavalry? Senior is in trouble. Kai Long was a little shocked, but at the same time, he was a little worried. We have already reminded him. If anything happens to him, he can't blame us. Kai Yu curled his lips and said. In fact, he was also very jealous of the barbarian cavalry. It would be a great help to Kai Yu's system. However, when Kai Long saw this, he suddenly laughed coldly and said, even if something happens to Senior and we can take over the barbarian destruction cavalry, do you think that Xian Ting will let our Kai Yu celestial system get it? Kai Long's words caused Kai Yu and the others to instantly sober up as if they had been enlightened. That was right. Even if it was a fortuitous encounter for Kai Yu. However, how could the Xian Ting hand over the Supreme Being army that had once massacred the Xian Ting to Kai Yu Celestial? Unknowingly. Kai Yu Celestial lineage had a deep sense of rejection and alienation toward the Xian Ting. On the other side, Jun Xiaoyaro also made his move. He thrust out his palm and clashed with the power of the 5,000 cavalrymen. The stone shattered and the sky shook as ripples surged. Jun Xiaoyao's palm was slightly numb. Interesting. The power amplified by 5,000 supreme beings is enough to kill an ordinary heavenly venerable. It's enough to block a mystique venerable's attack. The power of 5,000 supreme beings was not something that a seed-level prodigy could block. Jun Xiaoyaro could block it because he did not need to be too wary of a mystique venerable. However, the power of the barbarian destruction cavalry was only comparable to a mystique venerable. It was not really a match for a mystique venerable. Jun Xiaoyao's qi and blood surged as vast as the sea, activating the true power of the Tao fetus. As he threw out a punch, the power of qi and blood turned into a long dragon as the power of the Tao pattern spread out. The 5,000 barbarian destruction cavalry were instantly crushed and sent flying. Although it was comparable to a mystique venerable, it was still not the same as a true supreme mystique venerable. That aura, The aura that Jun Xiaoyaro released at that moment almost suffocated Kai Long and the others. They vaguely felt something. However, because it was only for a moment, they were not sure. Why, it's a bit like that kind of constitution. Kai Yu was surprised. However, he was not sure. That kind of constitution was rare since ancient times. Similar to the Chaos Physique and the Eternal Immortal Physique, it was very rare for one to appear in an era. How could such a talented genius appear in front of them so coincidentally? Did I sense it wrong? Kai Long was not sure either. If it was really that kind of constitution, it would surely shock the entire Nine Heavens immortal realm. Meanwhile, after defeating the barbarian destruction cavalry, Jun Xiaoyaro took a step forward and entered the last palace. Kai Long and the others cautiously walked up. It was unknown if it was because they were defeated by Jun Xiaoyaro, or because of Kai Long and the others' bloodline. The barbarian destruction cavalry did not move again. Instead, they returned to silence as if they were dead. Jun Xiaoyaro arrived at the last palace. A bloody smell assailed his nostrils, together with a strong murderous aura and emperor's aura. As far as the eye could see, there was only one pool of blood in the entire hall. The blood in the pool was not bright red. Instead, it was colorful. It was as if the blood of countless races had been absorbed into it, resulting in such a color. However, the pool of blood was not the most important thing. Instead, there was a scroll floating in the blood pool. That's right, it was a scroll. It seemed to be made of a special kind of leather, which was slightly yellow. It was engraved with countless ancient runes. Most importantly, the images of the 4 ferocious beasts seemed to be alive when they were imprinted on it. Jun Xiaoyaro glanced at it. The patterns seemed to be the 4 great beasts of the ancient era: Dao Tai, Qiongqi, Taowu, and Hun Dun. The 4 great beasts stood against the 4 godly beasts: the blue dragon, the white tiger, the vermilion bird, and the black tortoise. However, these pure-blooded beasts of the ancient era had almost gone extinct. In recent times, there were only some mixed-blooded descendants of them. However, in the real ancient era, the 4 great beasts were absolutely terrifying. For example, the Dao Tai tribe once had a pure-blooded cultivator known as the Dao Tai monarch, who had devoured more than one martial monarch alive. Jun Xiaoyaro could sense it. The scroll was emitting a strong emperor's aura. It was definitely a top-tier monarch weapon. However, Jun Xiaoyaro was puzzled. He also sensed a wisp of immortal Dao energy in it. This scroll did not seem to be just a simple monarch weapon. Heavens, that's Kai Long, Kai Yu, and the other prodigies of the Kai Yu celestial lineage who entered from behind almost suffocated when they saw the scroll. What do you know? Jun Xiaoyaro asked. Kai Yu and the others were speechless, their eyes were filled with shock and excitement. Kai Long came back to his senses and spoke. This should be the Kai Yu celestial lineage's quasi-immortal weapon, the Jolie painting, which originally belonged to the Kai Yu demon emperor, Kai Long said. Former quasi-immortal weapon? Jun Xiaoyaro noticed Kai Long's words. That's right. This Jolie painting was personally refined by the Kai Yu demon emperor. It was stacked with 9 martial monarch skins, infused with monarch runes, and refined with immortal blood. Finally, it was infused with the souls of the 4 great beasts to form a quasi-immortal weapon. Originally, Demon Emperor Kai Yu of my clan wanted to refine a true immortal artifact. However, he seemed to lack a certain material, which was why he could not refine it. The Kai Yu Demon Emperor only found 2 of the 4 great beast souls and sealed them in the Jolie painting. However, during the battle between the Kai Yu Demon Emperor and the Xian Ting, the 2 great beast souls were released. This might be the reason why the Jolie painting fell to the monarch weapon level. Kai Long told him all the information she knew. This information was recorded in the Kai Yu Celestial Lineage scripture pavilion. As a top prodigy of the Kai Yu Celestial Lineage, she had naturally read about it. Chapter 1263. After Jun Xiaoyaro heard about it, he couldn't help but marvel at Fiend Emperor Chio's generosity. 9 great emperor skins. Those were 9 great emperors. Moreover, with Fiend Emperor Chio's strength, the great emperors he killed were obviously not ordinary great emperors. They should be at least great emperors or even stronger. In addition, He also inscribed emperor runes and found immortal blood. Finally, he wanted to find the souls of the 4 beasts. However, in the end, he only found 2. In addition, to forge an immortal artifact, he seemed to need some kind of material. And this material didn't seem to exist in the celestial realm. Therefore, Fiend Emperor Caillou didn't forge a real immortal artifact in the end. He only forged it into a pseudo-immortal artifact. Later on, the Jiuli demonic kingdom and Xian Ting fought. Fiend Emperor Caillou released the souls of the 2 beasts in the Jiuli painting. Therefore, the Jiuli painting fell from a pseudo-immortal artifact to an emperor artifact. However, with the Jiuli painting's quality, it was definitely a top-tier emperor artifact. In other words, as long as we find the souls of the beasts and seal them in, this Jiuli painting will become a pseudo-immortal artifact again. Jun Xiaoyaro said. I don't know about that. Kai Long didn't dare to guarantee anything. Jun Xiaoyaro nodded lightly. At the side, Lu Fugue was drooling as he watched. One had to know that even the ancestors of the Lu family had only created a pseudo-immortal artifact after exhausting the efforts of the entire family. However, Fiend Emperor Caillou had used such a large amount of resources to create a pseudo-immortal artifact. In fact, if it wasn't for the lack of a certain material, he might really be able to create a real immortal artifact. This was simply heaven-defying. Don't think too much. Fiend Emperor Chio's strength isn't something that ordinary people can achieve. Jun Xiaoyaro seemed to have seen through Lu Fugue's thoughts and said. Lu Fugue also nodded. Indeed. Who was Fiend Emperor Caillou? He was one of the legends of the demonic path. He was a famous supreme expert in ancient history. To put it bluntly, Fiend Emperor Caillou alone could easily destroy the Lu family. Such a legendary figure was indeed not something that ordinary people and forces could compare to. It's a pity. Jun Xiaoyaro sighed softly. During the battle between Caillou and Xian Ting, Demon Emperor Caillou released the souls of the 2 ferocious beasts. Otherwise, this Jiuli painting would still be a quasi-immortal artifact. The value of a quasi-immortal artifact and an imperial artifact were incomparable. Fortunately, the Jiuli painting still had the possibility of being upgraded. As long as he could find the souls of the 4 ferocious beasts, he should be able to refine it into a pseudo-immortal artifact again. In fact, if he could find the special material that could be used to forge immortal artifacts, it was not impossible for it to transform into a true immortal artifact in the future. Thus, even though the Jiuli painting was only a top-notch imperial armament, it was still a top-notch imperial armament. However, his true value was evidently not limited to his imperial armament. After hearing Jun Xiaoyao's attitude, the Caillou Immortal Systems prodigies had a subtle change in expression. From the sound of it, this Jiuli painting seemed to already belong to Jun Xiaoyao. At the side, Lu Fugue coveted the Jiuli painting. But he also knew that this was not something he could obtain. Brother, I have a small request, but I don't know if I should say it. Lu Fugue said with a serious expression, which was rare for him. Previously, he had always been sloppy and carefree. This was the first time seeing him so serious. Why? You want this Jiuli painting? Jun Xiaoyaro chuckled. Of course not. Lu Fugue shook his head like a rattledrum. Brother, you've given us all the opportunities along the way. How can I ask for more? Brother, after you get the Jiuli painting, can you spare some time for me to study it? If you want to upgrade this Jiuli painting to a quasi-immortal artifact in the future, can you let us observe it? Lu Fugue asked carefully. If the Jiuli painting could be upgraded to a quasi-immortal artifact, it would definitely be a rare experience. If the Lu family could observe it, they would definitely gain a lot. It's not a big deal. Jun Xiaoyaro waved his hand. On the other side, Mo Yenyu also blinked and looked at Jun Xiaoyaro eagerly. The Mo family can do it too. Jun Xiaoyaro said. Now, Mo Yenyu and Lu Fugue were relieved. In the future, if they had the chance to witness the creation of a quasi-immortal artifact with their own eyes, they might have a special understanding of forging. Meanwhile, the group of Caillou Immortal Systems prodigies didn't look too good. This was supposed to be theirs, but now, Jun Xiaoyaro and the others were discussing how to use it. Then, Jun Xiaoyaro began to think about taking the Jolie painting. At this time, Kai Long hesitated and said again, "Senior, this Jolie painting, what?" Jun Xiaoyaro glanced at Kai Long. He felt that the Kaiyu immortal system's prodigies shouldn't be so ignorant. "Senior, please don't misunderstand. What I mean is that this Jolie painting can only be inherited by those of the Kaiyu immortal system's unified bloodline. If not, then what?" Jun Xiaoyaro asked. "Otherwise, unless you can get the approval of the Jolie painting, but that means you have to get the approval of Kaiyu Demon Emperor," Kai Long said. "So, that's how it is." Jun Xiaoyaro remained calm and unfazed. So what if it was a myth emperor? It wasn't like he hadn't seen one before. He had met the Azure Emperor before. Moreover, after experiencing the calamity, Jun Xiaoyao's horizons were completely opened. Now, he wouldn't even bat an eye if a myth emperor was in front of him. Jun Xiaoyaro began to put away the Jolie painting. Meanwhile, Kai Long quietly watched this scene. There was one thing she didn't say. If he could get the approval of Kaiyu Demon Emperor, then he would become the spiritual leader of Kaiyu Immortal System. Because Kaiyu Demon Emperor was the founder of Jolie Devil Kingdom. If he could inherit the Jolie painting, he would be recognized by Kaiyu Demon Emperor. He would become the leader of Kaiyu Immortal System. What will happen if he fails? Mo Yenyu suddenly asked. She was worried about Jun Xiaoyao. Kai Long pondered for a moment and said, "If he fails, he will die." Jolie Devil Kingdom itself was the origin of the evil Tao. If he failed, there was no way out. Now that's exciting. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled and directly stepped into the blood pool. Suddenly, the Jolie painting began to tremble. A majestic bloodlight enveloped the entire blood pool. Jun Xiaoyao's vision instantly turned black, and then the world changed drastically. He seemed to have come to a blood-red world. That horrifying soul pressure was simply going to crush a person's primordial spirit. Jun Xiaoyaro was now somewhat glad that he had broken through to the eternal sand-level primordial spirit. Otherwise, he wouldn't have much confidence in dealing with this unknown situation. At this moment, 4 balls of murderous aura suddenly appeared. 4 giant beasts that were as tall as ancient demonic mountains began to invade Jun Xiaoyao's sea of consciousness, wanting to devour his primordial spirit. The remnant souls of the 4 beasts. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes sharpened. This obviously couldn't be the true souls of the 4 beasts. It was just a trace of remnant soul aura. But even if it was just the remnant soul aura, it was terrifying enough. Its power was enough to completely crush a person's primordial spirit. At least among the 7 realms of Supreme, there shouldn't be many who could block it. Chapter 1264. The 4 ferocious remnant souls were like 4 primordial demonic mountains, towering tens of thousands of feet tall between heaven and earth. It could be said that there was almost no need for them to make a move. Just that pressure alone was enough to crush and devour the essence soul of an ordinary prodigy. Jun Xiaoyaro stood there calmly. His essence soul was also unparalleled in the world. In the entire 7 Supremes, it was very difficult to find an existence whose essence soul talent was comparable to his. In Jun Xiaoyao's sea of consciousness, the 3 lives essence soul emitted endless light. The past essence soul, present essence soul, and future essence soul sat cross-legged on the 3 Tao flowers. They were like 3 supreme deities overlooking the past and present. Roar. The 4 ferocious remnant souls let out a roar that could destroy souls. Even if it was just a wisp of remnant soul, it was incomparably ferocious. This also showed how powerful the 4 primordial beasts were, and they were not weaker than the 4 divine beasts. The 4 ferocious remnant souls directly pounced on Jun Xiaoyao's 3 lives essence soul, wanting to tear it apart and devour it. Jun Xiaoyao's 3 lives essence soul moved together. The past essence soul raised its palm and executed the reincarnation tribulation. A vast reincarnation vortex appeared, and there seemed to be countless illusory images flashing within. The present essence soul summoned the Vairocana Dharma idol. A golden Buddha that was tens of thousands of feet tall descended from the void with a mighty aura that could suppress the 3,000 Dharma realms. It was neither born nor destroyed, neither dirty nor clean, neither increasing nor decreasing. The future Essence Soul summoned the Essence Soul technique of the Nirvana tribe, the Nirvana Soul Bridge. Scarlet Nirvana flowers appeared all over the sky, and an ancient bridge that seemed to extend from the other side appeared. It was as if it was going to guide thousands of souls in the world. The three Essence Soul techniques were summoned together. And the most important point was, the current Jun Xiaoyaro was no longer the boundless Essence Soul from before. It was the eternal sand-level Essence Soul. This was a qualitative change. The power of the three lives Essence Soul and Essence Soul techniques naturally soared, and they were much stronger than before. The moves of the three Essence Souls suppressed the four ferocious remnant souls. It was as if three gods had descended from the sky to suppress the four ferocious beasts that wreaked havoc in the world. Roar. Cheong-chi, one of the four remnant souls, let out a hoarse roar. It had actually been swept into the tribulation of samsara, and it was being worn down by a myriad of eras. Although they are beasts. However, beasts also had reincarnation, just like humans and any other living creatures. The samsara tribulation could also affect them. The Mahavirokana Dharma idol came crashing down like a golden mountain. Instantly, the ferocious beast's remnant soul seemed to dissipate a little. The Parameter Soul Bridge also pressed down, guiding thousands of souls. Even the remnant souls of the ferocious beasts were not immune to it. After an unknown period of time, the four savage remnant souls were all destroyed. Jun Xiaoyao's sea of consciousness regained its clarity. That's it. Jun Xiaoyao thought. This stage was indeed not simple. The reason why Jun Xiaoyao didn't seem to be exerting much effort was because of this. It was because he was different from ordinary people and could not be judged by common sense. If it were any other heaven's favorites, they would only end up having their primordial spirits devoured by the four savage remnant spirits. At this moment, suddenly, the winds and clouds began to surge in the sky once more. Vaguely, a faint black figure appeared. It was tall and majestic, but it was not clear. Instead, it was very blurry. Although it was only an extremely faint shadow, the aura that faintly leaked out seemed to be able to make the world tremble. Anyone in front of it seemed small and weak. That is, Jun Xiaoyao's eyes narrowed. He saw it. Beside the black figure, there was also an extremely huge black and white beast shadow. It was an iron-eating beast. And Jun Xiaoyao, as a transmigrator, naturally knew what the other name of the iron-eating beast was. Panda. It was rumored that the demon emperor Kaiyu rode an iron-eating beast, which was also a panda. And there was no doubt about who this blurry black figure was. Jun Xiaoyao had sensed the aura emanating from another person before. That was the Azure Emperor. Without a doubt. This black figure was the Kaiyu Demon Emperor. Or in other words, it was a wisp of divine will that the Kaiyu Demon Emperor left in the Jolie painting. Perhaps the purpose was to choose a new master for the Jolie painting. It was also to choose a descendant with the potential to lead the Kaiyu celestial lineage. I am Jun Xiaoyao. Greetings, Demon Emperor Kaiyu. Jun Xiaoyao cupped his hands indifferently. It was very appropriate, but it did not appear to be servile. He had seen all kinds of storms. Now, there was no existence that could arouse Jun Xiaoyao's shock and fear. Someone from the Jun family? The wisp of Demon Emperor Chio's divine will looked deeply at Jun Xiaoyao. What about the descendants of the demon nation? Demon Emperor Kaiyu asked. They are already one of the 9 great celestial lineages of the Xian Ting. However, they don't seem to be doing well, Jun Xiaoyao said truthfully. Your hands are stained with the blood of the people of the demon nation. As soon as Demon Emperor Kaiyu finished speaking, a monstrous pressure poured down in torrents. It was as if the eternal universe was pressing down at the same time. Jun Xiaoyao immediately understood. He should be referring to Kai Lai. That terrifying pressure was simply capable of crushing all things into pieces. Any prodigies would collapse and their soul would disintegrate in front of that pressure. Jun Xiaoyao just stood with his hands behind his back. His sleeves were fluttering in the wind. I was just passively defending. There was nothing I could do, Jun Xiaoyao said. He was not lying. At that time, it was indeed Kai Lai who took the initiative to attack. He wanted to use him as a stepping stone to become famous on the ancient road of ultimate. Everyone from the Jun family is so arrogant. Demon Emperor Kaiyu snorted as if he had thought of some unpleasant memories. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes flashed. Could it be that Demon Emperor Kaiyu had interacted with some of the strongest seniors of the Jun family? It seems that the descendants of the demon nation are useless. Demon Emperor Kaiyu sighed. If the Kaiyu celestial lineage was still prosperous, the one who entered the Jolie diagram and participated in the test would not be Jun Xiaoyao. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes flashed. Then, he told Demon Emperor Kaiyu about the situation of the Kaiyu celestial lineage. He included the discrimination and unfair treatment of the Kaiyu celestial lineage in the Xian Ting. The Xian Ting is indeed untrustworthy. Back then, if they did not threaten me with the billions of lives in the Jolie demon nation, I would not have gone to the source. Demon Emperor Chio's words made Jun Xiaoyao's heart skip a beat. The first time he heard this word was from goddess Luomi Fei in the Temple of Doom. The so-called source and the great tribulation of an era. And now, he heard the word source again. Did Demon Emperor Kaiyu mean that he had gone to the so-called source of the calamity? What did the source mean? Did some of the top emperors in the mystic region go to the source? Although Jun Xiaoyao was curious, he did not ask. If he wanted to ask, he could directly ask the ancestors of the Jun family. The ancestors did not take the initiative to tell him. Perhaps they meant that it was meaningless for Jun Xiaoyao to know this now. However, Jun Xiaoyao was sure of one thing. Demon Emperor Kaiyu was no longer in the Nine Heavens immortal realm. Therefore, he could no longer protect the Kaiyu celestial lineage. And this was Jun Xiaoyao's biggest breakthrough. Chapter 1265. Senior Kaiyu, you should know that those who are not of our race will have different intentions. The Jolie Devil Kingdom is an outsider. Even if it becomes the Kaiyu celestial system, it will still be rejected by the Xian Ting. Now, we need someone who can change the Kaiyu celestial system. Jun Xiaoyao guided. With Kaiyu Demon Emperor's level of cultivation, it was obvious that his scheming wasn't bad. So, you mean that an outsider like you can lead the Kaiyu celestial system? Kaiyu Demon Emperor said coldly. The Jolie painting had a special meaning to the Kaiyu celestial system. Obtaining the approval of the Jolie painting meant that he had obtained the approval of the Kaiyu Devil Emperor. Such a person might not be able to lead the entire Kaiyu celestial system immediately, but at least he would be a spiritual leader. Jun Xiaoyao's words were tactful. But to someone like Kaiyu Demon Emperor, he saw through Jun Xiaoyao's ambition. He wanted to lead the entire Kaiyu celestial system. Jun Xiaoyao didn't panic at all after being seen through by Kaiyu Demon Emperor. This was already within his expectations. If a legend of the demonic path could be so easily fooled, then he would definitely be fooled. Then he wouldn't be able to cultivate to this level. I'm not a leader. I just feel sorry for the Kaiyu celestial system after seeing their current situation. After all, their predecessor, the Jolie Devil Kingdom, was so prosperous and was one of the origins of the demonic path in the immortal region. And you, the founder of the Jolie Devil Kingdom, shocked the immortal region and even forced the Xian Ting to negotiate with you. Jun Xiaoyao said indifferently. Kaiyu Demon Emperor went silent and looked deeply at Jun Xiaoyao. Facing a demonic legend, he could still be so calm and glib. This vision, this courage, this spirit. Even during Kaiyu Demon Emperor's era, not many prodigies could reach this level. Why is the Jun family always producing monsters? Kaiyu Demon Emperor murmured. He couldn't help but think of the monster that rose from the Jun family. The imperial seal of Tao affirmation descended from the heavens, but he didn't care. Later on, he fought until the heavens fell silent and challenged all the gods and even legends. Now, when he saw Jun Xiaoyao, he felt as if he was looking at that freak again. At the same time, he sighed deeply. If there was someone like Jun Xiaoyao in Chio's lineage, he would have been able to do so. No, even if he only had 1/10 of Jun Xiaoyao's talent and courage, he wouldn't have been oppressed to this extent. Junior, you are indeed courageous. But are you not afraid that I will destroy you? Demon Emperor Kaiyu asked. Jun Xiaoyao was still chuckling. Senior, feel free to attack. Junior's body might be destroyed, but I won't die. Oh, don't tell me you are. Even Demon Emperor Caillou had a strange look in his eyes. The Jun Xiaoyaro in front of them was actually just a clone. He could sense the imperfect aura of the carnate sacred being in Jun Xiaoyaro. And this was only one of his clones. The Jun family's Evildor had surpassed his master. Jun Xiaoyaro added, "Senior, I won't complain if you attack me, but the fate of Caillou Immortal's lineage might be decided. If there's a war between the two realms in the future, the Caillou Immortal's lineage will be the first to be destroyed. And the only person that can change the fate of Caillou Immortal's lineage is me." Jun Xiaoyao's words were deafening. Demon Emperor Caillou fell silent. Even someone of his status was not stupid enough to know what was best for the Caillou Immortal's lineage. "You've passed the test, but I hope you won't be as ruthless as Xian Ting," Demon Emperor Caillou said calmly. His voice was calm. However, it was quite pressuring. He might not be in the Nine Heavens immortal realm, but he had gone to the source. However, it was not a wise move to incur the wrath of a legendary demon cultivator. A cultivator like him didn't even have to do anything himself. A single thought from him was enough to destroy everything. "Thank you, Senior. Don't worry, the Caillou Immortal's lineage will only grow stronger in my hands. If you come back in the future, you might see a formidable faction on par with the Jolie Demonic Kingdom." Jun Xiaoyaro brought his fists together with a smile. Demon Emperor Caillou glanced at Jun Xiaoyaro one last time before his figure slowly faded away. He murmured in his heart before his figure faded away. "The Jun clan has an impressive descendant. With his talent, he will be qualified to go to the source in less than 1,000 years." Demon Emperor Chio's divine sense dissipated. Jun Xiaoyaro was finally able to begin the initial refinement of the Jolie painting. The Jolie painting was extremely important. It might only be a top-tier monarch weapon, but it had the potential to become a pseudo-immortal weapon. It might even become an immortal weapon in the future. The Emperor clan did not have a pseudo-immortal weapon until now. Strictly speaking, the Bronze Immortal Palace was an ancient weapon. It might be powerful, but it was not on the same level as a pseudo-immortal weapon. As for the Jun clan, it went without saying that they had more than one pseudo-immortal weapon. However, Jun Xiaoyaro could not give it to the Emperor clan directly. The monarch imperial court belonged to him alone. If he relied on the Jun clan, the management would be messed up. If he got the Jolie painting, the Emperor clan might have a pseudo-immortal weapon in the future. After that, Jun Xiaoyaro began refining the Jolie painting. At the same time, in other places in the world of divine remains, the prodigies of the other celestial orthodoxies were also getting opportunities. On a certain floating island, a young man in dazzling armor, who looked like a god of war, looked at the army of 10,000 puppets in front of him, and his eyes glowed. It was Xing Yunshan. This is a puppet army of the Xing Tian Celestial Orthodoxy, the Heaven Slaying Guards. They are in charge of punishing and killing Xian Ting rebels. Xing Yunshan's eyes were shining. When the 10,000 Heaven Slaying Guards worked together, they were definitely a powerful force. With this team, I might be able to go toe-to-toe with Di Haotian, Xing Yunshan said to himself. He looked at the depths of the land of inheritance again. There should be more of the Xing Tian Celestial Orthodoxy's inheritance there. He was not the only one like Xing Yunshan who got opportunities from the Celestial Orthodoxy. In another area, Di Haotian, with his golden hair and silver eyes, looked like a god. He held a dazzling flower bud in his hand. It was also a flower of the past. He did not know that Jun Xiaoyaro had already taken the flower of the past. However, it was not difficult for him to find another one. Di Haotian landed on a magnificent ancient ruin. He waved his sleeve. The ruins of the palace and its treasures had all collapsed. Below, the puppet army was lined up neatly. The puppets were all wearing ancient armor with dragon patterns carved on their chests. They held dragon spears in their hands and had extraordinary auras. The dragon-subduing army of the Fuxi Celestial Orthodoxy? There aren't many of them, but they can be used. Di Haotian waved his sleeve again and took the entire dragon-subduing army into his pocket. And Emperor Shi's sword. I must get it. After I get it, It's time to enter the real ancient ruins of the Xianting. I need to find that treasure that only I can use. Also, it's time to find her. When the time comes, I can use her power and prestige to unify the entire Xianting. Di Haotian's expression was full of confidence. He had arranged everything neatly. As for the deaths of the Purple Flame Lord of Heaven, the red-haired ghost, and the others, Di Haotian could vaguely sense it. However, he did not care at all. After this opportunity, he would unify the entire Xianting. When the time came, the 9 celestial orthodoxies would respect him. The 18 steeds of Yangyun would not be of much use to him. Di Haotian was different from Jun Xiaoyaro. Jun Xiaoyaro was a very protective person. However, Di Haotian only cared about himself. Even if they were his subordinates and followers, if they were not important, he would not care if they died as long as they did not affect his plans. If Jun Xiaoyaro was said to be a domineering figure, then Di Haotian was a cold and heartless emperor. Chapter 1266. The location of the Kaiyu immortal lineage's inheritance. Lu Fugui, Mo Yenyu, Kai Long, and the other geniuses of the Kaiyu immortal lineage. They all stared unblinkingly at Jun Xiaoyaro, who was in the blood pool. The Jolie painting had completely covered Jun Xiaoyao's figure. No one knew what had happened. Could there have been an accident? Kaiyu asked hesitantly. Impossible. It was Mo Yenyu, and her voice was cold and delicate. Her reaction surprised the others. Why was she so confident in the black-robed man? Getting the recognition of the Jolie painting means getting the Kaiyu Demon Emperor's approval. Not everyone can do that. Especially for an outsider, Kaiyu said. Master will definitely succeed, Mo Yenyu vowed solemnly. Because she was the only one present who knew Jun Xiaoyao's identity. In her eyes, Jun Xiaoyaro was a mythical existence. There was nothing he couldn't do. Jun Xiaoyaro had created far too many miracles for him to count. Compared to those, it was laughable that a mere Jolie painting could stump Jun Xiaoyaro. Perhaps it was because of Mo Yenyu. All of a sudden, the pool of blood began to boil. The Jolie painting, like a living creature, began to wriggle, tremble, and release a monstrous bloody aura. It was actually a rare murderous weapon. After all, it was made with 9 demon emperor skins as the foundation. Naturally, it carried a monstrous murderous aura. This was also the reason why it was difficult for ordinary people to control the Jolie painting. Because the murderous aura could affect the mind of the person who controlled it. If one couldn't get the Jolie painting's approval, even if one forcefully obtained the Jolie painting, one's mind would be eroded. In the end, one might even go crazy and become a madman who only knew how to kill. Under everyone's nervous gaze, Jun Xiaoyao's figure appeared. At this moment, the breathing of Kai Long and the others almost stopped. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his hand, and the Jolie painting shrunk in a bloody light and fell into his hand. He did it. Kaiyu and the rest of the Kaiyu Immortal System's prodigies widened their eyes, their eyeballs were about to fall out. Chiyo's Jolie diagram was taken by an outsider. That's awesome. Lu Fugui couldn't find the right words to describe it. Mo Yenyu had already expected this, so she wasn't too surprised. Kai Long's eyes trembled. He really succeeded. That means, Kai Long knew what this meant. This mysterious black-robed senior had obtained the approval of Demon Emperor Kaiyu. He might be the key to changing the fate of Kaiyu Immortal's lineage. The harvest this time is indeed great. Looking at the Jolie diagram floating in his palm, Jun Xiaoyaro was very satisfied. Even though the Jolie painting was a top-notch imperial armament for the time being, it was still a top-notch imperial armament. However, its material and foundation were still at the level of a pseudo-immortal artifact. Its value was immeasurable. Most importantly, Jun Xiaoyaro also discovered something else. In the next moment, he poured a trace of the power of law into the Jolie painting. Suddenly, the Emperor Dao runes engraved on the Jolie painting lit up. Soon after, the crowd felt a series of rumbles coming from the 5,000 barbarian cavalry. They actually knelt down on one knee in front of Jun Xiaoyaro. Everyone in Kaiyu Immortal's lineage was stunned. These 5,000 barbarian cavalry seemed to be under Jun Xiaoyao's control. One had to know that this was an army of Supremes. A total of 5,000 Supremes. Although they couldn't be compared to a real Supremes, this was still an invincible elite army, especially in the Forgotten Realms. Controlling such an army was enough to crush the other prodigies. Jun Xiaoyaro was very satisfied, very satisfied. Such an army was definitely an important force to the Emperor Imperial Court. It would be a great deterrent. It's about time. Let's leave first. The Jolie diagram in Jun Xiaoyao's hand shook. The 5,000 barbarian cavalry were all sucked into the Jolie diagram. The Jolie diagram wasn't just a murderous weapon with a strong murderous aura, but also a spatial artifact. It was so spacious that it could even store the sun, moon, mountains, and rivers. This murderous weapon could also be considered a weapon of war. At this moment, Kai Long suddenly spoke. "Senior, please wait. What's wrong?" Jun Xiaoyaro asked. "Senior, have you seen Demon Emperor Kaiyu?" Kai Long asked nervously. "I did see a strand of Demon Emperor Chio's divine consciousness." Jun Xiaoyaro answered honestly. "Did Demon Emperor Kaiyu acknowledge you?" "You can say so," Jun Xiaoyaro said casually. Hearing this, even Kaiyu, who had a trace of resistance and doubt towards Jun Xiaoyaro in the beginning, had a serious look on his face. After all, Demon Emperor Kaiyu was a godlike existence to Kaiyu Immortal's lineage. Since Demon Emperor Kaiyu acknowledges you, Senior, then you are the spiritual leader of Kaiyu Immortal's lineage. Kai Long bowed to Jun Xiaoyaro. "That's right. Whoever receives Demon Emperor Chio's recognition will be the leader of Kaiyu Immortal's lineage." Kaiyu and the others said solemnly, then knelt on one knee before Jun Xiaoyaro. The Jolie diagram was of great significance to Kaiyu Immortal's lineage. Since Jun Xiaoyaro had obtained it, he was their leader. This was an ironclad rule. Jun Xiaoyaro pretended to be hesitant, but the corners of his lips soon curled into a faint smile. Everything was as he had expected and planned. "You don't even know who I am, yet you want to choose me as your leader?" Jun Xiaoyaro asked. "No matter who you are, if you are acknowledged by Demon Emperor Kaiyu, it means you can definitely help Kaiyu Immortal's lineage." Kai Long said solemnly. "That's right. Kaiyu Immortal's lineage has had enough of Xian Ting," Kaiyu added. Anger surged in their eyes when they thought of the discrimination and unfair treatment they had suffered. "Fine, if that's the case, you can follow me for the time being. I don't think anyone from other lineages will dare to bully you," Jun Xiaoyaro said. Kai Long and the others were overjoyed. "Thank you, Senior." Of course, they didn't know Jun Xiaoyao's identity. But if they knew, their expressions might be interesting. After that, Jun Xiaoyaro and the others also left this place. The entire world of divine remains was extremely vast. Even the outer area was not something that could be explored in a short time. Jun Xiaoyao's eternal sand-level primordial spirit had a wide range of perception and was very sensitive. He had also found a few other places where they were hidden. But he wasn't interested in most of them. They were all divided up by Lu Fugue, Mo Yenyu, Kai Long, and the others. At a certain moment, Jun Xiaoyaro suddenly felt an inexplicable throbbing in his heart. It was an aura that seemed to come from the same bloodline, which made his primordial spirit tremble slightly. Jun Xiaoyao's heart skipped a beat. Even his quasi-carnate sacred body Dao embryo was trembling. That aura, could it be related to Desolate Emperor? Chapter 1267. Jun Xiaoyaro came to the Forgotten Nation. There was a big reason. It was because of the clue left behind by the endless Heavenly Emperor. Mars appeared, the Forgotten Land, Desolation. Jun Xiaoyaro guessed that the desolation was probably referring to the Desolation Emperor. But Jun Xiaoyaro also had doubts. How could the ancient Xian Ting have something related to the Desolation Emperor? The Desolation ancient sacred palace built by the Desolation Emperor shouldn't have anything to do with the ancient Xian Ting. The two didn't interfere with each other's business. Jun Xiaoyaro had always been suspicious. And now, he personally sensed this aura. It was in the depths of the world of divine remains. That should be the range of the ancient Xian Ting ruins, Jun Xiaoyaro thought. The entire world of divine remains. The outer and middle areas should be the places of inheritance of the major immortal heritages. The inner area was the most ancient and core of the ancient Xianting ruins. And the aura that resonated with Jun Xiaoyaro came from the ancient Xianting ruins. Without hesitation, Jun Xiaoyaro went straight in. The rest of the people followed behind him. After an unknown amount of time. In front of them, there were clouds and mist and thousands of rays of light, filled with a vast aura. It was a golden mountain that was so tall that the top couldn't be seen. Like the other floating islands, the golden mountain was also suspended in the void. Jun Xiaoyaro looked at it and felt a little strange. He felt that this golden mountain was in the shape of a human. Of course, it was only in the shape, and the outline was very blurry. However, around this golden mountain, there were countless runes as vast as the sea. There seemed to be a powerful gravitational field. Ordinary elites couldn't go deep at all. As soon as they stepped into this area, they would be pressed down from the sky. It seems that it's difficult for us to enter. Kai Long and the others looked troubled. Not to mention them, even Lu Fugue and Mo Yenyu had to use Dharma artifacts to barely enter. Seeing this, Jun Xiaoyaro gently waved his hand, and a vast aura surged. Like a cocoon, it wrapped this group of people in it. Everyone immediately felt that the pressure had disappeared. "Thank you, Senior." Kai Long and the others were pleasantly surprised. The strength of this black-robed senior was far beyond their expectations. Jun Xiaoyaro and his group were not the only ones who had come here. Groups of figures also appeared in other directions of the Golden Mountain. In one direction, a group of sky prides appeared. The leader of the group was a young prodigy. His hair was like burning flames and his red eyes were like molten lava. It was the Zhurong Immortal System's seed-level genius, Yang Xiao. On the other side, Shenong's geniuses also showed up, led by Medicine Gentleman. Next, Immortal Xing and the others also appeared. They were led by Xing Yunshan, Long Xuani, and the others. There was also the black-cloaked man with a special aura that Jun Xiaoyaro had been paying attention to. This should be the Saint Mountain, the place where the ancient Xianting geniuses had the opportunity to train, Xing Yunshan said to himself. In ancient Xianting, there were naturally some training grounds for young geniuses. And this Saint Mountain was one of them. The sacred mountain had an innately vast suppressive aura. It was a form of tempering and sharpening for any genius. In addition, if one stayed on this Saint Mountain, one's body would be greatly tempered. This was because the Saint Mountain was filled with a special aura that could automatically temper a prodigy's body. This was also the reason why Xing Yunshan and the others came here. They wanted to use this opportunity to transform their bodies. Beside him, the black-cloaked man with a special aura raised his head slightly. He glanced at the Saint Mountain and smiled. On the other side of the Saint Mountain, a group of people also appeared. Among them, there were two outstanding individuals who looked 70% similar. They were the first and second of the 18 steeds of Yang Yun. Radiant Battle Physique, Yu Hui. Dark Night Physique, Yu Mo. In Di Haotian's era, they could be called the most stunning twin stars. The two of them complemented each other and were invincible. Although it was a bit exaggerated, it was enough to prove their strength. If the two of them worked together, even Di Haotian would have to be careful. Beside them was a beautiful woman with a cold aura and bright eyes. She was the brains of the 18 steeds of Yang Yun, by Luoxue. She frowned slightly and said, "Purple Flame, Heavenly Lord, and the others should have died." Yu Mo said lightly, "There are many dangers in the Forgotten Kingdom. It's normal for them to die. I don't know why, but I feel uneasy. They might have been killed by someone else," Bai Luoxue said in a serious tone. "Someone actually dares to provoke us." Yu Hui didn't believe that someone would dare to attack the 18 steeds of Yang Yun. After all, they were Di Haotian's followers. Even if they didn't respect him, they had to respect him. It could be said that even the current young emperor, Ling Yang, didn't dare to fight Di Haotian head-on. Not to mention the other celestial heritages. "No matter what, we should be careful," Bai Luoxue said cautiously. "You're too jumpy sometimes." Yu Mo shook his head slightly. After that, people from all walks of life began to approach the sacred mountain. Among them, Qin Yuanqing's team had also come. All the prodigies started to climb the Saint Mountain. There were many blood essence treasures on the Saint Mountain. Some people even saw light flashing at the top of the Saint Mountain. That was the light of the elixir of immortality. Zhang Xiaoyaro also led a group of people to climb the Saint Mountain. However, he was protecting everyone alone. The moment they stepped onto the mountain, everyone could feel a unique aura seeping into their bodies, aiding in the tempering process. After sensing this aura, Zhang Xiaoyao's expression changed. He looked at the top of the Saint Mountain with a deep look in his eyes. He finally understood what that clue meant. Zhang Xiaoyaro led the group to continue climbing the Saint Mountain. The higher they went, the more pressure they felt. The others like Xingyun God, Yu Hui and the 18 steeds of Yang Yun, Yang Xiao from the Zhurong Immortal System, and Medicine Gentleman from the Shenong Immortal System also wanted to reach the top. Zhang Xiaoyao's speed was naturally the fastest. After a long time, he led a group of prodigies to the top of the Saint Mountain. There was a golden pagoda at the top of the Saint Mountain. The pagoda had 7 floors. It emitted an extremely terrifying sealing power. In each floor of the golden pagoda, there was an immortal source. In the immortal source, a figure with a profound aura was sealed in each floor. That's Kai Long and the others behind Zhang Xiaoyaro were shocked to see what happened. What do you know? Zhang Xiaoyaro asked. Could that be a saint sealed by the ancient Xianting? Kai Long was surprised. A saint from the ancient Xianting? Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes flashed. They were actually dormant seedlings. However, the saints sealed by the ancient Xianting were obviously not to be underestimated. And now, there were 7 of them. If they were released, they would probably become an extremely powerful force in the ancient Xianting in the future. This was not what Zhang Xiaoyaro wanted to see. More importantly, he had more or less understood everything. The ancient Xianting's actions really made him a little unhappy. Chapter 1268. Inside the 7-story golden pagoda, there was a celestial source on each floor. Each immortal origin contained a prodigy at the level of a saint of the ancient immortal court. Zhang Xiaoyaro sensed with his divine soul. The tempering aura from the entire sacred mountain gathered toward the golden pagoda. It then flowed into the bodies of the 7 sealed saints. In other words, these 7 saints were sealed by the ancient Xianting. During their long hibernation, they were being tempered by the aura of the sacred mountain. They used the aura of the sacred mountain as nourishment to temper their bodies. After such a long time, it was hard to imagine how powerful these 7 saints from the ancient Xianting had become. But why are they hibernating in the forgotten nation? This was one of the points that Zhang Xiaoyaro was puzzled about. The forgotten nation was sealed, and the time of its reappearance was uncertain. If the ancient Xianting wanted to seal seed-level prodigies, they should not have sealed them in the forgotten nation. In comparison, these 7 saints from the ancient Xianting seemed to have been sealed here with someone. Just like the 18 horsemen of Yang Yun, who were hibernating with Di Haotian. Could it be that there are other important figures from the ancient Xianting sealed here, and these 7 saints are just followers? Zhang Xiaoyaro suddenly thought of something. But no matter what, I have to destroy this golden pagoda first. Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes flashed with a cold light. He already knew some of the causes and effects. The most important thing now was to destroy the golden pagoda that sealed the sacred mountain. Just as Zhang Xiaoyaro was about to make a move. In other directions, other sky prides had also ascended to the top. They immediately saw Zhang Xiaoyaro and the others. It's you. The first to ascend was Xing Yunshan's bloodline. When Xing Yunshan, Long Xuani, and the others saw Zhang Xiaoyaro, there was a hint of coldness in their eyes. When they were fighting for the flying fairy waterfall in the Forgotten Nation, they were also tricked by Zhang Xiaoyaro. He didn't get the opportunity to enter the flying immortal waterfall. After that, Yu Hui, Yu Mo, Bai Luoxue, and the others from the 18 steeds of Yang Yun came up as well. They glanced at Zhang Xiaoyaro with a strange look in their eyes. The 18 steeds of Yang Yun could sense each other's presence. They could vaguely sense a wisp of Purple Flame Lord's aura. In other words, Purple Flame Lord of Heaven and the others had died at the hands of the black-robed man. On the other hand, Bai Luoshua looked at the black-robed person. For some reason, she felt even more uneasy in her heart. Following it, Yang Xiao of the Zhurong immortal lineage, medicine gentleman of the Shennong immortal lineage, and the rest of the geniuses, including Qin Yuanqing and the others, arrived too. For a moment, the atmosphere froze. Hey, could that be the seed of the ancient Xianting? Yang Xiao, medicine gentleman, and the others looked at the 7 figures sealed within the golden pagoda with surprised expressions. If we can win them over, the successors of the immortal orthodoxies began to think. We'll talk about this later. But right now, there are some personal grudges that need to be settled. Xing Yunshan said coldly and looked at Zhun Xiaoyaro. What a coincidence. We also have personal grudges that need to be settled. Yu Hui and Yu Mo also stepped forward. Seeing this, Yang Xiao and medicine gentleman looked at each other and took a step back. They didn't want to get involved in a 3-way battle. They had seen this black-robed person before. He was from Ling Yang's lineage. Yu Hui, Yu Mo, and the others were from Di Haotian's side. Xing Yunshan and the others didn't need to be mentioned. The 3 bloodlines were the most powerful forces in the world, and they were like 3 pillars of a tripartite balance. The other geniuses could only watch from the sidelines. Qin Yuanqing was also watching from the side. He also wanted to see if his thoughts were correct. You guys step back. Zhun Xiaoyaro waved his hand and asked Lu Fugue, Mo Yenyu, and the geniuses of the Kaiyu immortal lineage to step back. Lu Fugue was a bit hesitant because the opponents before them weren't easy to deal with. Even Di Haotian couldn't ignore Yu Hui and Yu Mo working together. Xing Yunshan had the battle's sacred body and was even more powerful. There was also the soaring dragon ancient emperor's son, Long Xuani. None of them were easy to deal with. Unless the black-robed person's identity was as he thought. As for Mo Yenyu, she stepped back without hesitation. She was the only one present who knew Zhun Xiaoyao's identity. In her eyes, although these opponents were strong, they weren't Zhun Xiaoyao's match. Looks like this battle is unavoidable. Zhun Xiaoyao's tone was still indifferent. Yang Xiao and the others looked at Zhun Xiaoyaro curiously. Facing Xing Yunshan, Long Xuani, Yu Hui, Yu Mo, and the other geniuses, he was still so calm. His identity had piqued everyone's curiosity. Do you think you can challenge us just because you have Ling Yang's support? Xing Yunshan's aura fluctuated. The few of them subtly sealed off all escape routes around Zhun Xiaoyaro. Zhun Xiaoyaro chuckled. I think you guys have misunderstood from the beginning. What? Their faces were cold. You guys are not worthy of being challenged by me. Would a true dragon in the 9th heaven provoke a loach in the mud? Zhun Xiaoyao's words caused the expressions of everyone present to change, making them look even colder. Boom. Xing Yunshan attacked directly. He had always been a swift and decisive person. With one punch, the world shook. The battle's sacred body was said to be the best in terms of combat ability. Of course, there might be some exaggeration, but the strength of this sacred body was undeniable. Zhun Xiaoyao also threw out a punch. The 2 fists met. Bang! There was a thunderous boom, and Xing Yun God felt a monstrous power coming from his arm. Like an egg hitting a rock, his chest shook and the blood in his body surged. He almost spat out a mouthful of blood, but he swallowed it down. Xing Yunshan was shocked. Zhun Xiaoyaro then said, brute force can take down 10. Combat techniques are worthless when faced with absolute power. Not to mention that his strength completely overpowered Xing Yunshan. In terms of fighting skills, Zhun Xiaoyaro, who had practiced the War God Catalogue and fought with ancient Chaos Emperor, was no weaker than Xing Yunshan. Who the hell are you? Long Xuani also took a step forward. Zhun Xiaoyaro didn't answer. He just said, you guys can come at me together. Otherwise, I won't even be interested in fighting. He's a bit arrogant, Yu Mo said. But it reminds me of someone who used to be so arrogant, but now, he's healing in his ancestral land, Yu Hui said calmly. The elites looked at each other. They all knew who Yu Hui was talking about. Mo Yenyu couldn't help but chuckle in her heart. She really wanted to see the funny faces of these people when they found out the truth. Zhun Xiaoyaro was very nonchalant about all of that as he stepped out. Suddenly, The entire sacred mountain seemed to tremble. An extremely terrifying energy appeared. The power of blood rushed to the sky as if it had turned into a dragon. At the same time, tens of thousands of runes appeared as if the great Tao in the world was resonating with it. When this aura burst out, it was no weaker than the pressure of the sacred mountain. The expressions of all the sky prides changed drastically at this moment as they exclaimed in shock. Innate Sacred Body, Chapter 1269. At this moment, Jun Xiaoyao no longer concealed his aura. A vast dragon of qi and blood traversed the sky. Billions of runes flickered, and flowers of the Tao bloomed in the void. Jun Xiaoyao seemed to be standing at the center of thousands of Taos, overlooking the heroes in all directions. Although he was still wearing a black robe, everyone had an illusion that he was a god of the great path who had descended here. How is this possible? The innate saint body, Xing Yunshan, Long Xuani, Yu Hui, Yu Mo, and the others were all shocked. Their previous calmness was completely gone. No one could remain calm in front of such an invincible body constitution. Before, Jun Xiaoyao only had the sacred body of the ancients, but he defeated all the geniuses and broke through the ancient road of the ultimate. Later, he transformed into the chaotic green lotus body, which had the same nature as the chaotic body. The innate saint body was one of the most outstanding body constitutions. As everyone knew, the ranking of the 3,000 body constitutions was not fixed. There were often ups and downs. But the truly powerful body constitutions couldn't be too weak. For example, the chaotic body, the innate saint body, and the eternal deity body had never fallen out of the top 5. This was enough to prove. As long as one had these body constitutions, no matter how weak they were, they could dominate an era. Previously, some people wondered why there was no news of the innate saint body in this golden era. And now, after personally feeling this aura, everyone's eyes widened, and their breathing almost stopped. The innate saint body, Kai Long, Kai Yu, and the other geniuses of the Kai Yu celestial lineage were all shocked. They didn't expect the mysterious person who was recognized by the Jiuli painting to have such a heaven-defying body constitution. No wonder he could be recognized by the demon emperor. Kai Long and Kai Yu came back to their senses. It would be surprising if such a body constitution couldn't be recognized. Mo Yenyu was also a little surprised. She knew Jun Xiaoyao's identity. But she didn't know that Jun Xiaoyao had such a body constitution. To be honest, she was also confused. As for Lu Fugue, he was even more confused. Did I guess wrong? Lu Fugue murmured. He had previously guessed that the black-robed man might be the rumored son of God of the Jun family. However, it was impossible for the Jun family's son of God to have such a physique. His sacred body of the ancients had crumbled in front of everyone in the world of the ruins of God. Later on, when he returned from the other side, he returned with the chaotic green lotus body. It had nothing to do with the natural saint being of Tao. In the distance, Qin Yuanqing's face was as pale as a sheet. I've been provoking a Taoist embryo of the carnate saint being? Qin Yuanqing's divine soul was trembling, and he wanted to slap himself. Fortunately, that lord doesn't seem to care about me at all. Otherwise, I would have been long gone. Qin Yuanqing felt a lingering fear. He felt as if he had just escaped death. Other than them, Yang Xiao, medicine gentleman, Bai Luoxue and the others were also extremely shocked. No, it's indeed the aura of the innate saint being, but it's not complete. The one who spoke was the black-robed man who was with Xing Yunshan. His words immediately calmed the hearts of the geniuses. Xing Yunshan and the others examined carefully and also felt that something was wrong. That's right. It's not a complete innate saint being of Tao. Xing Yunshan and the others also realized. But their expressions didn't relax much because of this. Even if it was an incomplete innate saint being of Tao, ordinary people couldn't underestimate it. There were the fight sacred body, the glorious battle body, the Dark Knight King body, and other supreme body constitutions. But in the face of this incomplete innate saint being of Tao, they still paled in comparison. They weren't on the same level. It seems that we really have to join forces, Yu Mo said in a low voice. He didn't sound as relaxed as before. His tone was very serious. Let us meet you and reveal your true colors, Xing Yunshan said. Their tones were much more restrained now. They weren't as arrogant as before. After all, no one knew if this incomplete innate saint being of Tao would be complete in the future. If it was complete, it would definitely stand at the top of this golden era. Boom. Then, Xing Yunshan, Long Xuani, Yu Hui, and Yu Mo attacked directly. The black-robed man didn't attack immediately. Bai Luoxue didn't attack either. The uneasiness in her heart was still there. Xing Yunshan activated his fight-sacred body. He clenched his fist and punched out. Instantly, thousands of fist shadows appeared. It was the Tribulation King fist. Long Xuani also attacked. His pure ancient emperor bloodline was boiling. He raised his hand and used the anti-dragon claw. Thousands of runes appeared in the air and formed a five-clawed golden dragon claw. Five-clawed golden dragon was the emperor of the dragon race. It was the most honorable symbol. His father, Soaring Dragon Ancient Emperor, was a five-clawed golden dragon. As for Yu Mo, he had the Dark Night King body. Around him, the black tide poured up like ink. It seemed to drown the world and was going to turn this world into an eternal night. Rumor had it that in ancient times, there was a Dark Night King body who'd reached the peak. He'd turned an entire ancient star zone into an eternal night. Billions of creatures couldn't escape from it. As for Yu Hui, he was the opposite. His body shone brightly like the sun. Hundreds and thousands of glaring balls of light appeared around him and shot out like a rain of light. It could be said that the four great prodigies had all used their strongest moves. After knowing that their opponent had a carnate sacred body, they didn't dare to underestimate him at all. Jun Xiaoyaro pushed out his palm as usual. However, this time, there seemed to be runes appearing on his palm, forming a great Tao rune. The runes seemed to have combined to form a bell. The bell seemed to be able to contain the world and suppress the universe. The prodigies present were about to suffocate. They were all outstanding prodigies of Xianting and had extraordinary vision. They immediately saw that the bell seemed familiar. The Wuzhong bell. That's Emperor Wuzhong's Dharma artifact. Medicine Gentleman of Shenong Immortal System exclaimed. As soon as these words were spoken, all the sky prides trembled. Emperor Wuzhong was definitely an existence that had been engraved in history. Even now, his name was still circulating in the deity region. With an ice coffin on his back and a bell hanging above his head, he killed his way to the 9 heavens. The Wuzhong bell was Emperor Wuzhong's Dharma artifact, which suppressed the 9 heavens and 10 lands. Of course, Jun Xiaoyaro was only using runes to construct the Wuzhong bell. It was a secret technique he had learned from the Emperor Wuzhong Sutra, called the Wuzhong seal. It could be said that in the entire 9 heavens and 10 lands, no one was more suitable than Jun Xiaoyaro to cultivate Emperor Wuzhong's technique. Could he be Emperor Wuzhong's successor? Yes, he also has a carnate sacred body. Although it's not complete, he can use Emperor Wuzhong's technique now. All the prodigies instantly figured it out. Damn, could he really be Emperor Wuzhong's successor? Lu Fugue was also shocked. If that was the case, then it made sense. Why was the black-robed man so powerful that he could instantly kill the Child of Truth, Purple Flame Heavenly Lord, and the others? Emperor Wuzhong's successor was no small matter. In fact, there were no weaklings among Emperor Wuzhong's successors. As for those famous great emperor successors, their strength was even more terrifying. Jun Xiaoyaro didn't refute. He already had the title of Emperor Luan's successor. It didn't matter if he had another title. Moreover, he had obtained the Emperor Wuzhong Sutra, so he could be considered half of Emperor Wuzhong's successor. However, the prodigy's expressions changed again when they heard this. After all, Emperor Wuzhong had a very special status in the deity region and was praised by tens of thousands of people. His successor obviously had an extraordinary status and wasn't someone to be trifled with. Chapter 1270. Jun Xiaoyaro held the Wuzhong seal and slammed it at the 4 geniuses. What kind of boldness was this? To suppress the 4 heavens favorites all by himself. The 4 geniuses had the battle sacred flesh, the glory battle flesh, the Dark Knight Emperor flesh, and the ancient Emperor bloodline. None of them were weak. They were all at the top of the geniuses. Now, however, he was faced with Zhun Xiaoyao's everlasting seal. They felt like the Wuzhong martial monarch had really appeared. The Wuzhong bell made up of the laws of talismans fell, as if it was going to suppress the whole world. That boundless power was too terrifying. It truly possessed an invincible demeanor. The sacred mountain was shaking as if it was resonating with Zhun Xiaoyao's aura. A thunderous crash took place. The four geniuses were knocked back and spat out blood. They were seriously injured. The geniuses were still shocked, but they were not as shocked as before. The reason was simple. They all assumed the mysterious man in a black robe was the successor of the Wuzhong martial monarch. The Wuzhong martial monarch was the synonym of unbeatable. To have the qualifications to become his successor, it was obvious that he was also invincible. Therefore, the others were not too surprised, even though they were a little surprised. Xing Yunshan and the others might be strong, but they were obviously weaker than the successor of the Wuzhong martial monarch. Are you really the successor of the Wuzhong martial monarch? Xing Yunshan wiped the blood off his lips. His eyes flickered with great fear. The Wuzhong martial monarch was too famous in the immortal realm. If Qin Nan was really his successor, his influence would be huge. On top of that, he also had the quasi-innate sacred flesh and the Tao fetus. The news would surely shake the nine heavens immortal realm. Many factions would try to recruit the successor of the Wuzhong martial monarch. Zhun Xiaoyaro smiled faintly, neither admitting nor denying the claim. If you don't dare to fight, then do as you please. Zhun Xiaoyaro had no time to waste on these people. Xing Yunshan wore a twisted expression. Many people in Xianting thought he was qualified to compete with Ling Yang and Di Haotian. After today's incident, his prestige would probably hit rock bottom. If the successor of No-End Great Emperor can defeat him, Xing Yunshan thought to himself. He no longer hoped to completely suppress or kill this black-robed man. Even if they could defeat him, it would be an honor. Isn't it an honor to be able to exchange blows with the successor of No-End Heavenly Emperor? I'd like to give it a try. Xing Yunshan did not give up and attacked again. This time, he didn't hold back at all. The power of the fight sacred body was pushed to the extreme. Behind him, the power of laws surged, transforming into a vast phenomenon. In that vision, an indomitable figure resembling a god of war was fighting with a true dragon. That battle intent seemed to be boiling as it swept through the heavens and the earth. That's the battle sage body's vision, the war god fighting dragon portrait. Some heaven's favorites exclaimed. They didn't expect Xing Yunshan to even use his battle sage body. The battle god fighting the dragon was so lifelike that it was as if it was happening in the real world. The battle qi pressed down with boundless might. Yu Hui, Yu Mo, and the others also attacked. Behind Yu Hui, a blinding sun appeared. It turned into a blinding beam of light that pierced through the void and attacked Zhun Xiaoyao. The glorious battle body vision, dawn break. Around Yu Mo, darkness surged like a tide, turning into a domain of darkness. And in this domain of darkness, a dark deity sat cross-legged, as if he was the lord of the dark night, the representative of the dead. Sovereign of the eventide, sovereign of the world. The sovereign of the eventide raised his hand and pressed down on Zhun Xiaoyaro with his pitch-black hand. It was as if a dark night had fallen. Everyone around hurriedly pushed away and exclaimed in their hearts. No wonder they could challenge Di Haotian. The strength of these two brothers was indeed shocking. In addition, there was Long Xuani. He didn't have a special body constitution. But he was a pure-blooded descendant of the ancient emperor and had the ancient emperor's bloodline. The ancient emperor's bloodline was no weaker than any other supreme body constitution. Long Xuani also attacked, the dragon blood in his body boiling. His dragon aura surged into the clouds and eventually turned into a terrifying true dragon image. A lifelike five-clawed golden dragon with scales all over its body appeared. It was tens of thousands of feet long and looked like a winding mountain range. Its dragon aura surged and covered heaven and earth. Some of the surrounding sky prides were forced to retreat, their faces full of shock. No wonder he's the pure-blooded descendant of the ancient emperor. This true dragon image is no weaker than other body constitutions. Some sky prides exclaimed. Now, everyone's attention was on it. Battle god fighting dragon portrait. Dawn break. Sovereign of the eventide, sovereign of the world. True dragon image. Four great avatars pressed down on Jun Xiaoyaro. Even if Di Haotian was here, he would have to be extremely careful. If he wasn't careful, he might fail miserably. Jun Xiaoyaro, on the other hand, stood with his hands behind his back and sighed softly. I won't cry until I see the coffin. As soon as he finished speaking, Jun Xiaoyaro took a step forward. Suddenly, his aura surged into the clouds, and the entire sacred mountain trembled as if it was resonating with Jun Xiaoyaro. 10,000 saints appeared around him and bowed. Sacred body avatar, reverence of 10,000 saint. Then, an immortal king stood tall and stepped into the 9 heavens. His immortal aura fell like a waterfall, and his aura shook the world. Immortal king descending to the 9 heavens. Chaotic aura surged, and green lotuses appeared. They were mysterious and magnificent, and each green lotus could crush the starry sky. Chaotic green lotus. In the void, a Tai Chi diagram appeared. Yin and Yang were born, and life and death were exchanged. As it rotated, it seemed to be able to revolve life, death, yin, and yang. Yin-yang diagram of life and death. Seeing the 4 great avatars, all the sky prides were suffocated. They even felt as if Jun Xiaoyaro was the one in the fight. After all, Jun Xiaoyaro had the sacred body of the ancients before. Now, the sacred body avatar had appeared again. However, no one suspected anything. The reason why the innate sacred body was so strong was that it combined the advantages of the sacred body of the ancients and the innate sacred body of the ancients. The sacred body of the ancients phenomenon could naturally be displayed by the innate sacred body of the ancients. This scene was extremely shocking. The 4 great sky prides displayed shocking avatars at the same time. In the end, Jun Xiaoyaro alone displayed 4 great avatars. This simply made people's blood boil. However, that was not all. After the 4 great sacred body avatars, another strange phenomenon had appeared. In the void, millions of miles of rivers and mountains seemed to appear. It was as if all the beautiful mountains and rivers of the mystic realm fell into it. In this scene, mountains towered, silver chains fell, ancient trees towered into the sky, and great rivers surged. Immortal aura was abundant, and it was a scene of immortals. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was the legendary ethereal immortal realm. This is the 5th avatar of the sacred body, the beautiful mountains and rivers. Someone exclaimed. Xing Yunshan and the others also felt their hearts skip a beat. Even Jun Xiaoyaro had only been able to create 4 visions in the past. But the successor of the Wu Zhong Great Emperor in front of them had cultivated 5. Under the hood, Jun Xiaoyao's expression was calm. Previously, he had comprehended the subsequent avatars through the blood of the desolate emperor. In addition, his aptitude later broke through to the king of anomalies, and his understanding of avatars became deeper. Now, including the beautiful mountains and rivers, 5 of the 6 great avatars of the sacred body had appeared. But in fact, Jun Xiaoyaro had also comprehended the last one. However, the last avatar was reserved for Di Haotian. As for the 4 in front of him, using 5 great avatars was more than enough to kill a chicken with a butcher's knife. Chapter 1271. At this moment, an earth-shattering battle broke out on the top of the sacred mountain. None of the heavenly talents had expected this. They would be here to witness such a vast battle. Xing Yunshan, Long Xuani, Yu Hui, Yu Mo. Every single one of them was definitely one of the best among the heavens' favorites. They were existences that everyone would submit to. But now, they were forced to work together against one person. That mysterious black-robed man had an even more shocking background. He was suspected to be the successor of the Wu Ji Emperor. It could be said that this battle would definitely attract hundreds of millions of cultivators to watch if it happened in the outside world. But now, only the heavenly talents around the sacred mountain were paying attention. Under everyone's gaze, the 4 avatars of Xing Yunshan and the others collided with Jun Xiaoyao's 5 sacred body avatars. In an instant, heaven and earth shook, and there seemed to be hundreds of millions of claps of thunder in the void, shaking the universe. The entire holy mountain was trembling, and rocks were rolling down the mountain. The 7-story golden pagoda was also shaking. And everyone's attention was attracted by the battle. No one noticed it at all. In the golden pagoda, the immortal source of the ancient Yanting's sacred sun began to slowly crack, rumble. The collision of the avatars was too shocking. In the middle of the collision, there seemed to be a lightning nebula brewing. Poof! The sound of vomiting blood was heard. Xing Yunshan and the other heavenly talents were all sent flying, and blood splashed out of their mouths. They were instantly injured again, and many of their ribs were broken. Everyone felt incredulous and looked at the other side of the collision. However, what made them dumbfounded was that Jun Xiaoyaro didn't retreat at all. In other words, the 4 of them together didn't even have the ability to shake Jun Xiaoyaro. How is this possible? Everyone felt that it was unbelievable. These 4 were definitely the top heavenly talents. Even if Di Haotian was here, he should have been pushed back a little, right? This successor of the Wu Ji Emperor is ridiculously strong, someone couldn't help but say. Behind them, Mo Yenyu's eyes were full of admiration. In her heart, she had already elevated Jun Xiaoyaro to a godlike status. But now, the strength that Jun Xiaoyaro displayed had once again refreshed her understanding of him. Jun Xiaoyaro was very calm about this. If it was before he had entered the Forgotten Kingdom, perhaps the 4 of them would have been able to force him back by 1 or 2 steps. But now, after a series of fortuitous encounters, Jun Xiaoyao's aptitude had reached the king of variables, and his essence spirit had broken through to the eternal sand level. He had also cultivated 30 nomological laws. Even though his cultivation realm had not changed, his strength had undergone a qualitative change compared to before he had entered the Forgotten Kingdom. The speed at which his battle prowess increased far surpassed any of his peers. It was enough to make everyone despair. This is a monster. Long Xuani coughed out a mouthful of blood. An ancient dragon-scaled armor appeared on his body. If it wasn't for the protection of this ancient armor, his injuries might have been even more serious. Yu Hui and Yu Mo's eyes were solemn. They felt like they were facing Di Haotian again. It was an unshakable existence that was as majestic as a mountain. Even Di Haotian had not brought them such despair. How can this be? Xing Yunshan gritted his teeth. His Dao was the Dao of battle. He feared nothing. But now, a trace of fear had appeared in his heart. This was undoubtedly a huge blow to his Dao heart. The successor of the Wu Tian Emperor in front of him had become his inner demon. I won't play with you anymore, Long Xuani said. He already had the intention to retreat, so he flashed away. Everyone's jaws dropped. This was not a nobody, but a pure-blooded descendant of the Emperor of the Ancients. How could he just run away like that? Yu Hui and Yu Mo glanced at each other and prepared to leave as well. They were not stupid. The person in front of them was probably someone that only Di Haotian could fight against. However, to their surprise, the black-robed man was directly suppressing them. Long Xuani and Jun Xiaoyaro did not care for now. However, Yu Hui and Yu Mo were Di Haotian's top warriors. Perhaps Di Haotian would not care if the other members of the 18 horsemen of Yang Yun died. However, even Di Haotian would not be able to remain indifferent to the death of the first and second-ranked generals. Therefore, Jun Xiaoyaro directly attacked and wanted to eliminate Di Haotian's right-hand men. Yu Hui and Yu Mo's faces changed when they saw this. They had not thought that the black-robed man would not let them go. The 2 of them shouted and attacked again. They used their body constitution to the maximum and unleashed powerful attacks. However, Jun Xiaoyao only pressed down with his palm and all their attacks were destroyed. The 2 of them coughed out blood. Successor of the Wu Tian Emperor, are you trying to offend young King Haotian? Yu Mo shouted. Don't worry. I will fight with him, Jun Xiaoyao said coldly. As soon as these words came out, everyone's eyes were filled with shock. The successor of the Wu Tian Emperor was going to fight with the ancient young King Di Haotian. It was going to be an epic battle between 2 geniuses. Is the successor of the Wu Tian Emperor related to the son of God of the Jun family? Some people guessed. After all, Di Haotian and Jun Xiaoyaro were rivals. Now, Jun Xiaoyaro was recovering in the Jun family's ancestral land. However, the successor of the Wu Tian emperor suddenly appeared and wanted to fight with Di Haotian. Other than Di Haotian, who can push me to this point? Yu Hui suddenly sneered. Are you finally going to show your true colors? Jun Xiaoyaro said casually, as if he already knew something was going to happen. What is the meaning of this? Hearing this conversation, everyone was puzzled. In that era, other than Di Haotian, no one could push me to this point. After Yu Hui finished speaking, he and Yu Mo looked at each other. One of them released a bright light, while the other released a dark light. Under everyone's shocked gaze, they slowly merged. Finally, a figure stepped out of the black and white light. It was a tall and imposing man. His hair was half white and half black, and his face was exactly the same as Yu Hui and Yu Mo. His aura was several times stronger than both of them combined. It was suffocating. That's the sacred light and darkness constitution, some geniuses exclaimed. The crowd was in an uproar. No one expected Yu Hui and Yu Mo to merge. The glorious battle body and the Dark Night King body formed the sacred light and darkness constitution. You're quite something. You have the sacred light and darkness constitution, but you split into two and cultivated them separately. Jun Xiaoyaro revealed the truth. Everyone's mind went blank. What? Yu Hui and Yu Mo are the same person? He actually fooled everyone. No wonder he's ranked first among the 18 horsemen of Yangyun and can even challenge Di Haotian. His talent is incredible. Everyone was shocked when they realized what was going on. They didn't expect the first and second of the 18 horsemen of Yangyun to be the same person. Di Haotian was probably the only one who knew about this, but he didn't reveal it. Di Haotian was the only one who could push me to this point. Now, there's another one.